Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 53. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. Growing up in Northern California, I had an incredible opportunity to go up to Lake Tahoe often with my family and created so many amazing core memories in the Sierra Nevadas. There is nothing for me like being up in the mountains, especially if I can be in the mountains around rivers, streams, lakes, getting to hike, camp, and just have alone time and also time with loved ones. A famous area in the Sierra Nevadas that I had never gotten to see is the Ansel Adams Wilderness. As a kid and even as an adult, I've always enjoyed the photography from Ansel Adams, and most of his photography was in this very famous area of the Sierra Nevadas. The Ansel Adams Wilderness spans 231,533 acres. 33.9% of that territory lies in the Inyo National Forest. 65.8% is in the Sierra National Forest, and the remaining 0.3% covers nearly all of the Devil's Postpile National Monument. In the Ansel Adams Wilderness, the elevation ranges between 3,500 feet up to 13,157 feet. It is absolutely some of the most beautiful areas, I believe, in the nation to go hike, camp, and backpack. It has been a bucket list place for many people, and I can tell you it's also been a bucket list place for myself for a very long time. I am very thankful that that bucket list trip just came to fruition recently, and today I have the pleasure of breaking down that trip with my brother, Mike Mitchell. We actually just got back from a backpacking trip in the Ansel Adams Wilderness with Tyron Caswell and Chris Lerma, who are two of our pastors at Milestone Church. Mike, what's up, brother?
Nothing much. How are you?
I'm good. What's going on, buddy? Lucas, what's up, man?
What's going on, Pumpkin?
Oh, you know.
It's so good to have you guys back after seeing all your pictures from the Ansel Adams Wilderness.
Dude, that place is...
You gave him access
unreal.
to the photos?
No. I sent him photos. I did not give him access.
Yeah, there was no access granted. But I do see that all of us have a little bit of scruff going on.
Yeah, this is probably the only... yours looks clean. Yeah, I like it. It looks good. I mean,
you look like you're trying to get on an episode of American Chopper.
That was brought up, actually.
Yeah.
Chris actually had to trim some of mine because it was growing wildly out of control.
Yeah.
But I had the scruff going too.
Well, good. Well, I'm hoping to get rid of mine. We're coming up on the final days of our beard banishment for the Brave promotion, where if you donate to America's Mighty Warriors and put in there JP Pod or JP Dinnell Podcast, however you do it in the memo, then we're earmarking that money and we'll help sponsor some veterans that need extra medical care, and I'll end up with... Is this a Echelon Front? Is this like Task Unit Bruiser Regs haircut?
Yeah, I think we'll let the top go long. You can have up to like a 2.
Now I already talked to my barber. He has
just straight up 1.
He has special trimmers on order that will get me less than 0, so that it can be the proper fade.
That's called an electric razor.
That'd just be a razor.
Yeah. So it's
special.
But I don't know what there is about it that's... Yeah.
No, I know.
It was just an excuse for Eder to order
no,
it.
I love
think
it.
Is what it is.
I'm definitely not making fun of your barber. I think that's awesome.
No, you can make fun of him.
I'm making fun of you.
He's a ween. So, but also we're partnering with our folks at First In.
Yes.
To do this. If you go to firstinnutrition.com/JPPod and show that you have given a $100 donation, you can get 4 free weeks of nutrition training. And they sent me some gear for you.
Uh-oh. Yeah. I got gear.
Yep. So when they announced that they were going to do rash guards, we got you this one. So that was my my other first anniversary purchase. So we're going to kick off year 2 with that. And then they sent this, which was they were going to give this to you at Origin Camp, but they're like, no, give it to them on the podcast. It's their Fiend rash guard. They were going to give that to you at Immersion Camp.
Like that.
Yeah, with the Misfits logo. So there you go. Some goodies from the folks over at First In. So thanks, Jonathan, for that.
That's not what you said on the mountain.
It's going to be our most heavily edited episode with you guys coming back from your boys' getaway.
Not true. You said that last time. You didn't edit anything.
Yeah.
That's true.
All right, let's jump into this. So originally, this trip which, by the way, I'm super thankful I was invited to go on this trip. This is a once-a-year trip that Tyron and Chris do. Last year, you were on that trip, right, Mike?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
For some of it.
Well,
Short.
You started on the
I
trip
started,
with them.
didn't finish.
And where was that trip? Last year's trip?
Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
It was the Wonderland
man.
100.
The
It was at
Wonderland
Mount Rainier.
100.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
It's
a-
100 miles around Mount Rainier. So you have it's a very difficult permit to pull. You have to pull a permit, and then you pull it based on how many days you want to complete it in. So you have, I think, up to I'm not 100% sure, but 12, 14 days, or 10 or 9 days, or 8 or 5 or 6 days. So it's like you can really go get your butt kicked, or it's going to kill you no matter what. But
Yeah.
like the one we did was 6 or 7 days. So we were doing 13. We were expected to do 13-ish miles a day or more. So
What I don't understand about this is like the mixing of, and this is a pet peeve of mine just within the U.S. that we do, is we mix the miles and kilometers so much that when somebody says like, oh, it's the Mount Rainier, what did they call it? The what 100?
Wonderland 100.
The Wonderland 100, right? Like, I don't know.
It's 100 miles.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
but you got to tell me that it's 100 miles, because at Pikes Peak they may have it's the such and such 50, and you're like, all right, well, 50 miles. Like, no, 50 kilometers is only like 30 miles. Like, you'll be fine. You don't need to.
They're
Like, the mixing of those things irritates me.
I think they
Personal
only
pet
mix it.
peeve,
I think they only mix it for like races, but
they
like
definitely mix it for races.
yeah, but I think distances. At least, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Distances at every national park. If you're like, oh, I'm going to go do this hike, they're all in miles.
It depends. I think
They're all in miles,
Yeah, I
'cause
think on like all the
topographical-
on the placards. Yeah,
so they
that's
have
true.
to be. Well, they don't have to, but I think they're all in miles because that's what matches up with the topographical maps.
That
you
would
buy.
make sense, yeah.
Correct. I mean, you went to college for that.
yes.
That's what you went to college
Yes.
for?
Bro, I'm so envious
Cartography?
of what he got a degree in.
Yes. So whenever I meet somebody, they say, "What was your degree?" If I don't really want to talk to them, I say geography, and they go, "Oh, well, that was a waste of time for you, probably." Like you were just trying to get a degree, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, but so my degree was GIS, which is short for Geographic Information Systems. And so what we were doing back then in 2002 to 2006 timeframe when I was in was inputting data into computer systems and things to actually build layers into maps. So what you see in Google and what oil companies use. So
That's cool.
So I used to build maps with layers using data and
Do you
code
use
and
that
all that
today?
stuff. No, not at all. I should have. Like if I was smart. I would have done that. I would have kept up with it. So I did a lot of land surveying. I could build topographical maps. I could build.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I did a lot of that. So at one point, we were talking about it, and he was looking at the map. He's like, "Well, why don't you look at it? Because that's what you used to do." And I was like, "Well, I don't have much effort, but yeah, let me look. Yeah, we are going the wrong way. Yeah,
We're not going the wrong way. There's not one time that we're ever going the wrong way. Was there?
yes, there
When?
was. Were you not there? It was when we were headed off the mountain in the middle of the night. We went the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
That's considered
Okay.
the wrong way.
So,
We were going in the right direction. We were just on the wrong path, which was the wrong way.
and we were on that wrong path because we heard, "Hey, down here, over here, guys."
It wasn't us. Like we knew it was wrong. It was just we were being led by blind faith in our friends.
So we'll get to that point
Yeah, I
of
was
the
gonna
story.
say, how do
It's-
you end up in the dark? We got to get there.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, it was awesome. This trip was so. Anyway, so
So
Mike
fun.
got to go last year. I was invited last year. I wasn't able to. My calendar was full, and to be honest, as we'll get into this one, I'm thankful I was not able to go to that trip because when I was invited to last year's trip, it would have been a quick turnaround. I wouldn't have been able to do last year's trip with these guys. I mean, because the Wonderland 100 is a legitimate, like, just gut check of a trip. Like,
Yeah.
there
I mean,
is
100 miles up a mountain is no joke.
but it's not up.
It's not up.
This
It's-
one is
or, yeah.
constant up and down,
it's
up and
around.
down, up and
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
around.
For reference, day one was 11-ish miles, 11, 12 miles. The first half was a 2,200-foot descent.
Whoa.
And then we had lunch at a creek, and then we went up another 2,200 to 2,500 feet to finish the day.
Dang.
So that was pretty much every day you're doing that. It's not like, oh, we're going to just walk in a circle around Mount Rainier and it's like small elevation. It was, you had to be ready.
Wow.
You had to be ready.
And, to the like, when they're going on these backpacking trips, they're using the hiking poles.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't bring the poles because I was like, I had them. They're on the packing list. And like, this was like another, like so as we dive deeper into this, there are so many, I am just getting so frustrated with myself, but then also trying to remember all these things. I'm like, oh, life lesson, life lesson, life lesson, life lesson. And that's the intent for this podcast, is to share different lessons that we experience in life. And this hike was full of them because to be 100% transparent, I just was not prepared for this backpacking trip. And I was really upset with myself day one because I knew that I was invited as a guest to join this trip that Tyron and Chris do every year. This, for them, it's like, hey, once a year we get to go do this. It's a big thing. They pick like different areas, and we were originally supposed to go to the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho, but with all the fires over there, we were trying to figure out, okay, hey, what should we go do? The four of us got on a Zoom call, and we were trying to figure it out. And I just mentioned Lake Tahoe. I was like, hey, I grew up in Sacramento. We used to go to Lake Tahoe all the time. The Sierra Nevadas are amazing. They're incredible. It's beautiful. There's a lot of backpacking. There's a lot of hiking, camping in that area. And Tyron and Chris have both said, well, I've never been there. It's a bucket list. And you had never backpacked in that area, right?
Correct.
I mean, you had been there, but...
Yeah, I've been in the area, but no.
And so Mike had been in the area, and he was just like, well, it's gorgeous there. And we all voted. We're like, cool, let's do this. The problem is getting permits. So initially it was like just making last minute changes to things can actually be detrimental to the whole trip. We were very fortunate and blessed. It was a blessing from God that we got the permits, because pulling permits in that area for those regions for that amount of days it's very difficult to do. And luckily, Chris, I mean, he's like a logistics savant.
Yeah. No, I was going to cut you off. Be like, if not, but for Chris Lerma,
100%.
He was, and Tyron is also as well, but Chris is just all over it. And he probably went through 8 or 9 different scenarios, and there's a chance that he failed on a few. This was like the 3rd or 4th option. I don't know. I didn't ask.
Yeah, I don't.
But his attention to detail and his knowledge, and just like what you were saying, if not for him, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, we had a buddy who went to the Grand Canyon. That was like his last big hurrah before he got married. He was like, I'm going to go camp out of the Grand Canyon on my own. Didn't know that you were supposed to have any permits for anything. And so decided, because he had this week plan, that that's what he was going to do anyway. So he ended up going off trail and hiking like a couple of miles off the trail every day, and so had to cut his trip. Like, his plan was significantly shorter than what it otherwise would have been, and it like ruined his entire thing whenever he couldn't get him.
I would have just gone back into Flagstaff or Phoenix.
Yeah, and just been like, I'm getting a hotel.
Yeah. So Chris Lerma, like, that was like one of the initial like lessons that I got from this was, okay, hey, you have to have a lot of different contingency plans put in place for a trip like this, because we're talking, there's a lot involved in this in regards to time off of work, cost of travel, flights, rental cars, hotel. Where do we get a hotel, for one night, depending on where we're flying into, how many days we're going to be out there, how much gear and food can you actually carry? Are we coming out of the field to get resupplied? Do we mail resupplies to a different area ahead of time? So there's all these things that are involved in these longer duration trips, which I didn't realize that an 8-day backpacking trip is like a legitimate, very long trip that a lot of people don't do. Even 5 days, that's a legit backpacking trip. Like, there's a lot planning. So having a subject matter expert in your group that can take lead on it is really important.
Yeah.
And Chris was that guy, and Tyron was that guy, and watching them work together, and just, there was also no egos involved when it came to the planning.
No.
That was the most bizarre thing that stood out to me, was nobody cares.
Yeah.
Everybody cares about the trip, but nobody cares
cares where we end up.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
How often does that ever happen in an organization when you're just planning a basic thing?
When visions align, when everybody's unified,
I like that when visions align. So, so that initially stood out to me as pretty awesome. And then, so the amount of research that Chris did on the area showed me like his level of excellence and him just being a professional.
Absolutely.
I felt like he knew more about the Sierra Nevadas in that area, Lucas, than I did, and I grew up going there, and he had never been there before.
You can confidently say he did know more by the time we got there. Than
Oh,
you knew.
100%, because he'd be like, "Oh yeah, this area," and I was
And
like,
even if you started talking about something that you knew, he's so humble. He'd just be like, mm-hmm. He'd pretend like you're teaching him something, but he already knows.
yeah, but then he would add to it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wait, hold on,
Yeah.
like,
But
where did you grow up
subtly
again?"
add to it, like.
And so that was awesome. So we end up getting permits because he finds a way. He talking to some range. He was like calling park rangers out there. And
Dang.
getting to know, like doing a recon on the area, figuring out all this stuff, had all these different routes planned and alternative routes, and I was just thoroughly impressed. So we made that shift. We fly out there on Wednesday, and then we got a hotel up in South Lake Tahoe, which was awesome to be able to like go up there. So we fly in Wednesday. We grab dinner. Oh, we go. First stop is we go by an REI. I was trying to grab some extra gear, which I didn't.
Much needed gear. He needed much more gear.
Mike. Okay, so the footprint I needed for my tent. I absolutely needed. So again, this comes down to not understanding. I didn't ask enough questions leading into the trip. Like, okay, hey, I have my tent. What's a footprint? Like, why?
Yeah, you said the footprint for my tent. I was like, I have no idea what that is.
Okay, so
It's a small barrier.
It's a small barrier that you put under the tent to protect the tent from the elements so it doesn't get cut up, scraped up, because the new backpacking trip tents are super lightweight. The goal is to be as light as possible,
So now you have to buy something extra.
but it weighs almost nothing. Yes, because the tent, they're not going to make it because you don't always need a footprint. Like if you can, but where we were backpacking,
You definitely did.
yeah,
100%.
because so with the granite and different rock, the possibility like you might be on a granite rock. That's the only flat spot that you have.
Oh, dang.
And so if you just put a lightweight tent on that and you're moving around, you're going to cut it up and tear it up. And so the footprint, the tent that I bought, there was no footprints anywhere in REI. When I bought it, I couldn't get any online. So we were like, all right, cool. We'll go by REI. When we land, we'll find one. They didn't have one. So we tried to get the one closest to it. And the lady's like, oh yeah, this will work for it. And I'm like, all right, cool. Well, it didn't. We made it work, but it didn't fully fit underneath it. And it was just frustrating. But anyway, so we stop at REI. Then we go grab dinner. And dinner was awesome. Well,
Everybody else was everybody.
Mike had
Not everybody's.
Mike ended up with a hair in his burger, and he was just like, I can't.
I was chewing, and I said, "Can I have a napkin, please?" And they all look at me like, "Why?" And I'm just like, pulling.
Oh,
And it wasn't just like a little hair; it was just like
was
Lucas's old hair length that comes
man.
out.
It was long.
talking like 18 inches long of hair.
Yeah,
It was pretty bad, but I finished the burger anyway because I was hungry.
Do you think it was like in the sandwich, or do you think it was like in the burger? Like it was
It
pounded
was.
into
I
the
think it
ground
was
beef
in
patty?
the. It was in the.
It was in the patty.
No,
Oh.
I don't think it was in the patty.
Just
It
like-
was in the lettuce, the other things.
Just like found its way into a sliced tomato and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Dinner was good. We went to a place that I used to grow up going to. It's called Leatherby's. It's an ice cream parlor, but they have food. So outside of his hair, I mean, the food was good.
Burger was good. I finished
Yeah,
it.
the food was good. The ice cream was good. But the thing that frustrated me was I was like, man, we should have just grabbed something quick. And that was on me because like, hey, where do you want to go? So I'm seeing this awesome place that I grew up going to.
got that nostalgia
Yeah,
going.
the nostalgic core memory type of thing. I'm like, cool, I want to bring these guys to Leatherby's. We should have just grabbed a bowl from Chipotle, ate, and been on the road. Because in my mind, it's like the later we get there, just going into the trip with fatigue and everything else like that, I just felt bad. Like,
I disagree.
okay.
I thought it was great, and I also think probably tiring. It's all about the experience. So it's like all about having fun, togetherness. Just grabbing it. It doesn't matter. Just like you said, the plan can be the plan, and then it changes, and no one cares.
That's fair.
But we all had fun. I mean, we all had banana split. Like we all got huge ice cream dishes, and
That's awesome.
So I'll disagree with you on that one.
I'm good with that.
I mean, it cost us an extra 30, 40 minutes maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah, So I went into this trip also running low on fumes, like fatigued, wasn't feeling very good. And so anything that I felt like I was doing to ruin the trip, I was like super hard on myself. And then, which is another lesson of like, hey, don't let those don't sweat the small stuff. Like when you let those little things become big things, it can ruin the trip. Now, I didn't ruin the trip, but I was
internally it ruined it for you.
Quickly getting really irritated with myself. And we hadn't even started the trip because, again, in my mind, I'm like, I'm a guest on this trip. I was invited to come on this trip, and I didn't want to ruin it for any of the guys. And I'm like hypersensitive when it comes to those things. So for me, it was like another reminder, like just chill. You're with your bros. Just chill. Yeah. And I hadn't gotten the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Chris before. He came over to our house when we did a group workout and we prayed over the house last year. And like that was it. I hadn't had a lot of opportunity to spend time. I wasn't close with him like I am with Mike and Tyron. And so for me, I was also a little hypersensitive of like not ruining something for him. So it was funny. It's just those things that we make up in our brain that aren't real. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Self-induced friction.
Yep. Yeah. You're trying so hard not to ruin it for anybody else that you just ruin it for yourself.
And everybody else.
Yeah. Sometimes, right?
Yeah. So we get up there, we get to the hotel, we unload our gear, and then Mike and I are like in the hotel room, like going through our gear, and I end up completely unpacking everything.
Oh no.
Everything, because I'm like, I need to repack. I need to readjust stuff. I have different things.
So much stuff. Like he had his table. It's like his pack was packed still, and then he fills up the whole table full of gear. And I'm looking at him like, if I didn't know anything about you, I would say he's special forces. Because those guys and their gear is it's a thing. It really is
too much.
Like, it's just like I see it. I'm like, he's SF. Like it's 100%. Like you're fitting into the mold right now because it's just gear, and it's awesome because y'all know how to use it and you have it, But it's also kind of like you're gonna hurt yourself here in a minute.
Yeah. Well, it's funny he says that because I'll fast forward the next day. We're driving to this area, and I'm talking with Tyron, and he's talking about PJs, and I'm like, yeah, one of my old uncles. I still call him my uncle, but it's my aunt's ex-husband. He's a part of my life for a very long time, and we still talk, and they split, and anyways, doesn't matter. He helped me with some programs going into buds, and would always like check in and everything, and he was a PJ for a very long time, like over 30 years, I believe.
What's a PJ?
Pararescue, Air Force
gotcha.
Pararescue.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are like doctors in the community. Amazing. And so anyway, so Tyron's talking about that, and I was like, my Uncle Matt, like he used to like do all these hikes. I don't know how much he still hikes, but he's done all these different hikes. And I was like, dude, I should call him. So I called him, and we were talking about the hike. He's like, oh, dude, send me pictures. Tell me how it goes. Well, I tell him about it. He's like, that's a legit long hike. And, kind of talking about everything. And he's done, he's done Half Dome twice, El Cap twice, Reindeer a few times. And then
all of it.
Yeah.
That's basically what I gathered.
Yeah.
Everything.
And even like the big ones, like K2. He didn't complete that,
wow.
But they were 85% up K2, but then they got called to go rescue somebody, and so they went and did that, his unit. And so anyway, so big background in backpacking, and then so I told him about the trip. Well, after the trip, I called him and kind of was like telling him, and he just was like laughing. He goes, yeah, guys are our background. Tend to pack too much stuff. And so the only reason why I'm fast forwarding that right now is to Mike's point is I had way too much stuff. Really? So I personally was too heavy. Like I didn't stick to the training program that Tony gave me.
You mean like your actual weight?
Oh,
you were too
physically.
heavy. Yeah.
My body weight was physically too heavy, and my backpack was too heavy. So once I had my backpack fully loaded with water and fuel, and I also packed meals for 8 days. Even though we were coming back out of the field, technically according to our schedule, at 5 days because Mike had to fly back early for work for his business. And so even though we knew Mike was going to come back because he owns a roofing company. He was going to have to be back for this job that he was getting started. So we had to come out of the field on Monday. And Tyron and Chris are like, well, we're just going to have our stuff in the car to resupply.
Yeah.
My ego goes, well, no, this is an 8-day trip. I'm going to pack everything for 8 days because I wanted to see if I had the capability to do that with packing. So it became an ego-driven challenge of packing everything for 8 days, which was stupid. There was no need for me to do that.
Yeah.
We asked him why. I believe in the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Because you said, like, I'm packing for 8 days, and I think it was Chris. He was like, why?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's just my thing. I'm just going to, I forget that how you.
Yeah, no, I said,
you weren't just a jerk about it. You're like, no, I just want to pack for 8 days. And everybody was like, right on. You know?
Yeah,
like,
they're like, cool.
I mean,
like,
some
guess
people
if
have
you
their
want
things.
to,
You know,
yeah.
maybe, I don't know. It wasn't a big deal.
Which is funny, though, if you look at it from a leadership standpoint, all three of these guys knew I shouldn't do that. But if I did it, okay, it's just going to suck for me.
Yeah.
And so I was like,
And the
all
food
right.
was the heaviest part.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, cool. Like,
And the fuel.
If you want us in the fuel and the water and the extra clothes and the
No, it wasn't
thicker
really
backpack,
water
then
because you didn't drink any.
the thicker sleeping bag that I needed. There's so many things there. Anyways,
Can't blame it on the water.
I was drinking my water.
He might have been drinking his water. There just was barely any on board.
Yeah.
I was also trying to figure out. No, I had a good amount. I had
1 liter.
the bladder is 1.5. The camel, the Nalgene, which is another liter, and then the other one that was a liter. I had
Rarely emptied.
3.5 liters.
Rarely emptied.
I was trying to conserve because I didn't know how often we're going to be able to refill. And so, yes, Mike's right. I wasn't drinking enough water. So that's another lesson of like, hey, just because you normally can live in a close to dehydrated state in your day-to-day activities, when you're backpacking, this is not the place to do it.
How did you
At
know
altitude.
you weren't drinking enough water?
Quickly.
Quickly, when my body, well, no, it wasn't the cramps. It was when I was like, oh, these guys have all had to use the restroom a few times, and I haven't once.
Yeah.
I had no need to use the restroom. And when I did, it was like applesauce.
Bro, that is not good.
Well,
Especially
here's
the
Like
first
applesauce,
couple
like
hours.
color or color and consistency.
not consistency. That's
that's
an
good.
over-exaggeration.
That's good.
I mean, we were getting there probably. No, like it was apple juice dark.
Yeah.
Like dark apple juice. The problem is when we got to the hotel that night, it was like that. And when I woke up in the morning, even though I was drinking a bunch of water on the flight and at dinner, because I was noticing Tyron and Chris and Mike were all like water, 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 and I was like, okay, cool. So I'm like starting to pound water. I was already behind. I was behind the hydration before we started this trip. And Thursday morning when we woke up to use the restroom, I was like, oh, my urine is like dark. Like this
Yeah.
is not good. And I know that I have kidney problems and that I'll have that. So I didn't say anything until we're in the middle of the hike day one. I'm telling Mike, I'm like, dude, I was like, bro, I'm starting to like cramp up really bad. Like this is not good. And then I noticed like when on the hike that I wasn't having to use a restroom, I'm like, this is a problem. So with my weight being too heavy and all the gear that I had in there that I didn't need, so my pack was too heavy, I overpacked. I didn't, follow the guidance. I didn't talk through it. If I would have, it wasn't that I was dismissing these guys, but I didn't talk through it. And so for me, that was a big leadership lesson and a life lesson of like, hey, get alignment and clarity with people that do this more than you. It had been years and years and years since I'd done anything like this, and my ego kept getting in the way of me just, hey, what are you carrying this? Why are you carrying that? Okay, cool. You know what? I can strip this. I can strip this. I can strip this. Once I had my backpack fully loaded, and I loaded it up with water and fuel and everything, fuel meaning like the fuel for the stove.
Right.
What do you think my total weight was?
Like you plus the gear or just the gear?
Me plus the gear.
400 pounds.
No, bro. Come on.
Well, because how much do you weigh?
235-ish.
Okay, then yeah, I overestimated your weight. Then I'd put
So
it,
an average backpacker is what, about 30 to 35 pounds of gear, 40 max?
Yeah, I was over 40, but
But you also knew you were going to be a little bit heavier
Yeah.
than the other guys. So Tyron and Chris were probably what?
they're probably Chris was in the low 40s.
Okay.
He told me low 40s. I
Okay.
would say 30 to 35 is It's pretty light.
So we're
but you're not
300?
carrying. I could have probably been in the 30s because I wasn't carrying. Chris carried a bunch of extra gear.
Yeah,
for
Chris
the
and
whole,
Tyron carried extra gear
for
us.
everybody.
Yeah.
So, I was heavy too. Yeah. I could have been. I should have been lighter. You and I should have been the lightest.
Yeah.
Were you 300 pounds?
298.
Good grief, dude.
Yeah, that's not.
Did you approach this like you would have like a patrol? Like in the sense of like packing your gear because with
Worst
in the
case scenario,
conversations,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
like because in the conversations that we've had when you've talked about going on patrol, that there were certain things that like your leadership was like, why are you doing it that way? And you're like, this is the way I do it, and everybody's like, okay, cool. So it seems like those types of responses are also things that you were pretty used to when you were like, hey, I'm doing this, and the guys were like,
yeah, but when
do your thing.
When I was in the teams, it wasn't like this is the way I do it in an ego-driven way. It was like this is the way I do it because I have to.
Yeah.
This was not because I had to. In the teams, loading out that much gear was a necessity. In Ramadi, it was a necessity to have that much ammo, water, grenades, frags, and all that stuff. Yeah. This is not Ramadi. This is Ansel Adams Wilderness backpacking trip with my bros, and I don't have to have anything more than a 5-day
But you
need.
approached it like Ramadi.
Yes, I did.
It's the hard part. It's hard, right? Because I do the same thing. We're used to loading out 70, 80 pounds, and that's average, right?
Yep.
So it's weird for us, I would say, to be in the 40-pound range because we're like, why does my body not crumple whenever I put this thing on? Like, but I'm also 40.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. Like, I am not in my early 20s in just peak phenom conditioning. I am 41, too heavy, and I'm strong for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like,
The caveat that though is those guys are older than us by 6 or 7 years. Well, me, Chris and Tyron. Chris is 46, 47, and Tyron's 47 plus or minus. Yeah. So like
he'll be 48 in November, I believe.
So they're like,
yeah, and that was
and they made us look silly.
Oh, they made me look stupid, not Mike. So this is like the cool thing I noticed right away. So we start off the hike. Tyron and Chris take lead. I'm right back. I'm in the number 3 spot, and Mike's in rear security. I just kept calling it rear security in my brain the whole time. And what I quickly realized is what Mike was doing is he was pushing me from like in that rear leadership position is because he recognized quickly like, oh, JP is going to be struggling. Oof. And, and from him just being like a great friend and from a leadership standpoint, he took that back position, which sucks. That position sucks because you can quickly that gap can start lengthening out. And I was lengthening out the gap. I mean, the first 20 minutes were like, this is awesome. Like, this is awesome. It was beautiful.
It was flat.
Because it was flat. It was flattish. Had some little ups, and you're like, all right, cool. And I remember one time going, oh, man, look at that lake. And Mike looks up, and he's like, oh. And he tells himself, like, pick your head up once in a while and look around, because he was just head down and we were trucking, because that's when it was starting to get like, oh, this sucks. And like the gap kept lengthening and lengthening, and Chris and Tyron would stop and they would say, hey man, we have these little breaks, we call them brownies. If you need a brownie, just let us know, like we'll give you a break.
We ain't asking for no brownies.
I know, dude.
We don't need no brownies. Y'all just please give us more.
And so it was a, that very beginning, it was awesome. And then I quickly realized, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm capable of keeping up with these guys. Can I do the hike? Yes. But at what pace? How many times am I going to have to stop? And then I was also kind of balancing like, hey, when I'm like out backpacking, hiking, I like to go super slow and look around and take pictures and talk. And these guys had a plan, which was very much needed. Like the plan was needed to go from here to here. Well, we also started later in the day than we wanted. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that were like playing into, hey, we got to pick up the pace, because the very first day it was going to be a legit, to that spot, it would have been an 8-mile hike. So 8 miles to get to where we were needed, over 3,000 foot of elevation gain. And it was going to be a legit day that we had to push, and I wasn't able to. And so I remember we stopped for lunch, it was a little lunch break, and then we continued pushing, and they decided like, okay, hey, we're going to push this way to cut a little time off. And it was supposed to be easier on the train, or no? It definitely was not easier on the train. But it was for distance. They were like, hey, we're going to cut the distance down.
I think it was cutting the distance, but the terrain was more difficult. I think.
Yes.
It ended up being, based off of my experience, the terrain was more difficult because I think we went.
Yes, it was.
Coming back, we went the way.
We went the other way. So
which was just as difficult, but just
a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now we are climbing, like legit climbing.
On shale rock, like not.
Oh, man.
No, the trail was there. We had a trail. The trail was maybe 30 inches wide.
Maybe.
You know, but it's not like walking on a trail around here. It's rocks.
Yeah, it's not
big
like a
rocks,
hard
small
beaten
rocks,
dirt path.
roots, slippery, moon dust. Like it's it's not smooth and clean. So you have to be very intentional where your foot goes each step.
There's a few times like I like slipped and like kind of rolled to the right, and I was like, oh my gosh, like if I go down that, man, I don't know, like can I get this backpack unclipped off of me before I'm just like a rag doll?
The answer is no.
I mean, and it was like it was a legit like little drop off.
Because by the time you fall off some of these spots, you're on your second roll before you realize you've fallen, I would think.
Yeah.
And then by your second roll, you've hit your head. I mean, it's just, it's not good.
Yeah, Mike was like, if you fall down there, I'm not able to get you up out of there. I'm like, same.
Like, not even possible. Like, we're going to slide down and swim.
Yeah.
Like, because there was a lake below us, like by several, 4 or 5, it kept getting further and further away. But I was like, the only way to get somebody out of here is just to continue to go down to the water.
Yeah.
And then hope that you can float their body or pull them through the water to safety in 50-degree water.
Wow.
The cool part is we were walking through this cool little treat area, and we were talking with a couple. The culture of other backpackers, how awesome were they?
Phenomenal.
It's
it's great.
Everybody's nice. They want to talk. They're sharing like, hey, where you headed? This is where we came from. Hey, and they're giving advice on the trails. And to me, I was like, man, could you just imagine if 75% of society lived like the culture of the backpackers on the trail?
Yeah.
Life, I mean, this world would be night and day different.
Yeah.
So just the fact that strangers were going out of their way to share lessons and helpful hints, and they're being kind.
Yeah.
Like kind to everybody. What a unique concept, right? Like, and so
even after they find out where you're from.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Because you find out where someone's from, you're like, oh, like Texan, you're probably Republican. Like
everybody's like, oh, that's cool. What is it like?
Yeah, but you would think like the first, I usually don't tell people I'm from Texas because I don't want to get into a conversation that's about that. So it's like,
so we met this couple that we were talking, and he goes, how are those Origin pants? Because we all had the Origin Raptor Woodland 3.0 pants, like the new Nylock Field pants from Origin, which are freaking super comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw you guys twinning in some of those pictures.
Yeah,
we were quadrupling.
Day one, no big deal. And then the RTX Burr shirt, like that combo was absolutely incredible for the trip. So so we see this guy, he's asking about it, we're talking about it, and I'm explaining like the pants and the different layers and the RTX Burr. I was like, yeah, this is the new one, this is what it does, and we're talking, and then his wife goes, oh, that's cute, all of you guys are matching. We're like,
yes we are.
Yep, you're right.
And yes, it is cute.
But, so we keep on, and I remember we get to a point where I'm just looking up, and I can't see Chris and Tyron anymore. I'm like, bro, how far ahead are they?
And a lot. They were a lot
said
ahead.
something to Mike, and he
already knew.
Yeah, I was like, all right, well, and I wasn't complaining about them. I was just frustrated with myself, and I told Mike a few times, I'm like, bro, I'm sorry, man. I was like, I can't go faster. My body's starting to cramp up really bad. And because my legs were cramping so bad, I had a lot of instability in my knees. And, my ACL's torn in 2 different spots. My meniscus, I'm missing most of that. And so I'm just like, and so now my knee is starting to like shift left and right.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. And there's a few times that it hyperextended. And Mike was like, I saw that. I'm like, you shut your mouth. You didn't see anything. Don't say anything.
I see it all.
And so now we're talking about, I was like, hey, bro, I'm cramping pretty bad. I was like, and all of a sudden this deep cough.
Yeah.
like came all of a sudden. Now I have like this deep cough. I'm like coughing and spitting up stuff. I am so frustrated and disgusted with myself that I'm just like, okay, just keep going. One foot in front of the next, one foot in front of the next, like just keep going. And, you know, I think we briefly talked about this on the hike, but, you know, I'm spending a lot of time alone with the Lord, which is awesome, you know, and I'm just praying. But then I shifted my prayers to, you know, because most of the time people pray for help, for blah, 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 blah. Like, hey, Lord, give me this. Lord, give me this. Lord, give me this. And before on the drive, Tyron and I had listened to this video. I think I sent it to you guys in the group. If not, I'll send it to you. You'd absolutely love it. And this guy is talking about, you know, the thing that I got from it is like, hey, when we're praying, it's like, no, focus on how much God loves you. Not saying, God, I love you. I love you. No, hey, God,
There's a sermon that you sent us.
yes,
in the group.
God, thank you for loving me. Like the way you love me. And he was talking about how it was John, right? Who talks about how much God loved him. And so like I was just
The
thinking about
disciple
that.
that Jesus loved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I shifted my like to like, you know, God, thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for the family that you've blessed me with. Thank you for these friends. Thank you for what I get to do at Echelon Front. Thank you for Little Cattle Co. Thank you for On the Pad. Like all the things I get to do. Like I was thankful for you and your family and the podcast.
Well, you're
And-
digging deep.
yeah, I know. Yeah. But you know, I just really started shifting my thoughts to like, I'm just so thankful, Lord, for what you and thank you for loving me. Like I don't deserve your love. I don't deserve salvation. I deserve hell. That's what I deserve. But because of your love, and so I started, and then I got frustrated with myself because my initial prayers were like, God, give me the endurance, give me like restore my health back to where I used to be. That was my initial selfish prayers because I'm tired, right? And fatigue makes cowards of us all. And so that's when I'm like almost like whining, asking for these things in my prayers. And then I remembered that sermon and I was like, nope, like, no, this is stupid. You're being an idiot. This is not what you pray for. You need to be praying and thanking him for what his love and everything that he's given you. And so I shifted that and it was like, the word like endure came through. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm not going to, he could, but he's not going to like restore my health and performance to like what it used to be. Why would he? I haven't put in the work. Like God will bless us if we put in the work. I hadn't put in the work, but he has always given me the ability to endure. I know that I can endure hard times if I have my mindset right. So I just had to shift my mindset. So Chris and I, we push up the trail. This family's coming down the trail. I'm sorry, Mike and I are pushing up the trail, trying to catch Chris and Tyron.
Not trying. We're just trying to survive.
Well, I mean,
I ain't trying to catch nobody.
In my mind, the whole
catch your
time,
breath.
in my mind, the whole time is like, we can catch up to them if they stop long
When they
enough.
stop.
Hopefully they
When they
stop
stop
at
for
a
the
Y.
night, we'll catch them.
Now we know where we're ended, and I'm like, okay, I can follow signs. Mike and I can read a map. We'll make our way where we need to be. And this family's coming down the hill, and we're like, hey, how you guys? Like, good. And
Lying. 100% like, yeah, we're fine.
everything's fine. I can't even catch my breath to drink water, but you know, everything's fine. And the guy goes, we were told that the reason why you're struggling is because you had the egg sandwich that you ate last night. And like one sandwich that I ate, it was this awesome egg and bacon sandwich, right?
Sure.
And it was really good. And I just smiled and I laughed and I was like, yeah, you know, that or the fact that I'm fat and out of shape, like, you know. And the wife's like, oh, that's not true. And I'm just like on the inside, I'm like,
Definitely the egg sandwich.
one, both of you guys just
That I ate
shut
half
up.
of.
Yeah.
That's why you were back there with him.
Yeah. Like the initial reaction was like,
I was
just,
smelling the egg sandwich.
like, I don't know, who are you? Shut up. Like, I don't need these, like, I don't, what? And then the best is their son is like probably 12 years old. And he's just like, you're doing great, buddy. And I'm like,
Keep it up.
keep it up.
First of all, I've never seen somebody so close to getting murdered on a mountain, which was the man, the husband said. He starts making a joke like, hey, I heard the reason why you guys are so slow is because of the egg sandwich or something. I'm like, I can't say what I want to say, and I know like JP's like this. Just you don't. I don't know. That's just an awkward thing to say to a stranger.
Sure. They obviously though had talked to others.
Oh yeah, they
yeah.
They were like, hey, give him some crap, whatever. But he's straight up said the wrong thing to the wrong people in the wrong moment, and so I was like, bleep, please. Like I was like, I will drag you up this mountain unconscious,
just so I can throw you down.
But like, so I'm thinking this is the closest this man is to ever dying.
Yeah.
Because it's just
Meanwhile,
we were
his
on a
VO2
steep. We were
max
on
is
one
like
of those.
98.
Yeah, his VO2 max was better than ours, but we were on this
ours
pretty
combined.
steep incline with a sharp drop off. Like there, I think we have a picture of it coming through at night.
Yeah.
that shows the steepness of the grade that we were on, both going up and the face that we were on. And then the child says something, and I'm like, I'm not above. I'm not above this because that's an assault. He verbally assaulted us, and
He was violent with his words.
He was violent with his words by encouragement, and it was not encouragement because he used the word buddy.
That's true. That's condescending.
It was very
So
condescending.
it was so like, and I think after you said that, I was just like, "Yep," and I just was like,
The conversation ended immediately
gone.
when they were, because we were all joking, ha ha ha. And he's like, y'all just keep it up, buddy. Y'all keep going. Y'all are doing great. And we were just like, that's it. We're leaving.
I'm done.
Like you people.
This is the time I detach from the situation because
Like, can you imagine Cora and Nola, like after, Isaac or Steven loses and they're like, you're doing great, buddy. Like that's that.
Might be different because they know him. Like this is a complete stranger.
but they're still
Yeah, but
gonna
just-
feel the like, shut up.
Yep.
Like, and now this, like to Mike's point, this is a complete stranger that I have zero relationship with. I'm like, are they being condescending? I again,
They
going
were
back
not.
to the culture,
They were
I
not.
think they were not. But the way they said it and the way we received it, because again, fatigue makes cowards of you all. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've never made a good life decision when I've been tired, exhausted, emotional, and frustrated and mad. Like not
you're
once have
peeing
I
apple
ever.
juice.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is stupid. So we keep going, we push, we get, and we see. And I remember we get to this one point, and the trail literally goes. You can see that they're going two different ways around a rock, and I'm like, do we go left? Do we go right? And we're like looking down the ground, trying to look for boot prints and figure it out. And both of us were like, no, we saw them on the rock face. They had to go right. They went right. We talked through it. Boom. So we're going around, and it's like climbing up this little area, and we get also we see the guys, and I'm like, oh cool, they're right there. And I'm like, they don't have their backpacks on. I'm like, all right, cool. This is gonna be an extended break. We're gonna do one of those again. I'm like, nice. And they're like, hey, we found a place that we're gonna hike, that we can camp out for the night. And I just had this sense of like, oh yes, like this is awesome. But then instantly I'm like, wait, no, like we're not to where we're supposed to be. They're doing.
We're halfway there.
We're halfway. We're at 4 miles, exactly 4 miles, and I'm like, now I'm like mad at myself because I have screwed this up for them. Day one, I'm the guest, and I just messed this up, and I am internally just fuming. But Tyron and Chris are such loving, caring people. They don't care. They're just like, cool, whatever. We're just going with the flow. And this is a genuine thing. They're not faking it. And so all of a sudden, like, they're like, hey, we're going to camp here. And then like, come on, hey, let us take your backpacks.
Don't touch me.
I was like, nope, I'm fine. And I immediately was like, I'm sorry. Like, I think I said I'm sorry. I don't know. Maybe I didn't, and I should.
You probably did because that's like your immediate thing. You do that a lot.
Okay.
You're apologetic immediately. Not just on this trip. That's just who you are.
Okay.
Like you're
I recognize my screw ups.
and not not in a negative way either. It's just like
It does feel a little bit like when I see that Kirsten's frustrated whenever I get home and I'm like, hey, do you want me to do the dishes? And she's like, no, don't touch anything. I'm like, okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
So I was a little frustrated, and I said no.
And he said something that was very interesting. I don't think it was that moment, but it was the next day when they offered to take our packs. But we were like,
Was this a daily thing?
Yeah. It was a daily
Oh, bro, just wait.
They ended up, never mind. But he said something that was really great in the moment, and it was so subtle, but it was impactful. He's like, I'm not helping you in my pride. Remember that?
Yes.
He's like, in our pride, we're not helping you. So in your own pride, let us help you.
Yeah.
So maybe we still didn't let him help us, right? But
Sure.
because you're not carrying my pack.
Well, they explained
he
that
carried my
afterwards.
pack
It was
last
nice.
year. Tyron came and took my pack from me last year. I was like, no, I'm carrying my pack. He's like sternly said, let me help you, because I was injured, right?
Yeah.
I was hurt.
Yep.
I'd torn up some hardware in my ankle, and it was like I was in really bad. So I was like, yeah, here, take it. Like, and it was dark, and he needed to take it because I was taking too long. So, but it was very impactful to me what he said, and I hadn't heard that in a way before. In your pride, I'm not helping you in my pride. So why don't you accept my help?
Yeah, and they were like, hey, we're here to serve you. They're like, hey, let's take your packs. We'll set up your tents. And I'm just like, no, like, you're not taking my pack. You're not setting up my tent. Like, I'm a grown man. This is what I should be doing. But I had never...
Which they did none of it. We didn't let them do any of it.
But I shouldn't say never, because you know who would do stuff like that? Seth.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way Seth was.
Yeah.
And, when this is released, we're coming up, in a few days. Actually, it's, the anniversary of when Mikey passed away and Seth passed away. And so I was thinking about them a lot on this hike. And
Seth's birthday came up while you guys were out on the hike, didn't it?
nope, when we just gotten back.
Okay.
Yeah, out of the field. So it was on the 17th. But anyways, that threw me off a little bit, because you're just not used to people being genuine with that.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, this is cool. So we set up in this beautiful area. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. And they're like, bro, this is awesome. I'm happy that we're here. And so I saw this genuine shift in their heart and their mind of like, here's the deal. I know whether they want to admit this or not, consciously or subconsciously, they had to have been frustrated that they had to stop. Because their original plan was, we want to push all the way to this one spot, and we were going to stay there for a couple of days and then go to another spot, which was the spot that they wanted to go to. And so we have to stop, but they instantly shifted. And to me, that was like a good reminder of like, don't be so emotionally invested into your plan that if something changes, it ruins the trip and or the mission or the thing that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And
I'll push back on you on that. Okay. I don't think there was and I can't speak for them, obviously.
Not even an ounce?
I know them.
Okay. Yeah. You know them. Yeah.
I mean, I know them, but I can't speak for them, right? But I genuinely don't think there was any frustration on their part either.
That's unreal.
Like, because their entire purpose of the trip, and they mean it, is togetherness. So the plan is not the priority, right? Now, the overall, hey, let's get to Thousand Island Lakes. That was the plan. Like, if we didn't get there, there might have been some disappointment, right?
Oh, you mean if we never got there?
We never got there.
Yep.
Like, there's probably some disappointment, but I just don't really think there's frustration, because listen to what they say. And when they talk, when Tyron and Chris talk to me, I walk with them. They're my spiritual authority.
Yes.
So when I take everything they say at face value, I don't read into it.
Yep.
So when they say, "Hey, we're hurting too," like, it's not just y'all that are hurting. We're hurting too. This is a great place for a stop. We want to stop here because, there's other factors, right? Like, it's getting late. We don't want to set up camp late. We have another 1,000 feet to climb before it starts to level out. Like, they make decisions. I don't think out of frustration. It's just out of safety, necessity, and what's best for the group. And those guys pivot so well on those trips because the goal is togetherness, not the plan.
So this was a view on day one where we stopped. Those pictures that I had sent.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And
it was
Mike
great.
in his tent.
Because
we all had 3 little separate spots.
We all had several hours to, we had like 2 hours to settle in before the sun went down, hang out, talk. We made dinner. We were able to I mean,
Just
it was,
hang out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the purpose of the trip, was
Yeah.
for us to hang out and be together.
So it's cool. We get set up that first night. We're making meals, and it's funny. It's like I had all this fuel and a stove with me that I brought because, like, again, that's what we do. We have our own stuff with us, and I couldn't.
I gave up on that last year.
Again, he's smart. Like, through experience and just knowing that Tyron and Chris, they had a stove that was functional, it was fully capable, and it was much better than mine. It was a much better updated version. The stove I had was awesome. It still worked. I tested it out before the trip, but it was what was issued to me in 2003 when I went to Kodiak, Alaska for cold weather training.
Yeah.
Innovate and adapt. You think gear has maybe slightly evolved and changed in the last 21 years?
Maybe.
Slightly.
Evolved.
Yeah, and so they had a better stove, a better setup, and so they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be cooking the water or boiling the water for all of the meals." Shout out to Raz, who gave me these incredible meals that he prepped ahead of time. They were
good. Well, I didn't have one. I had a Peak Fuel one.
Yeah, it was venison, white rice, shredded cheese,
It looks
sour
so good.
cream, and sriracha. But
This
it
stuff
was
looks so good.
it was 2 cups of venison. And 2 cups of white rice and the cheese and the sriracha and the sour cream.
That's enough for like 2 meals.
Bro, it was over. It was the macros on it was.
It's a couple of pounds of food, man.
It was for 2 meals, but he
It
ate
was.
one.
Well, I mean, yeah, I ate it as one. I needed that day one.
Yeah, no joke.
I was
Sounds
eating
like
all the meals are for 2 servings.
Yeah,
right?
the
and
ma-
you eat them all in one.
Yeah, the macros on this was 1,489 calories, which is everyone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, it's so high. Hey, go check out that meal that you get from Chili's, right?
Yeah, no
That's
joke.
1,700 calories. Or the salad that you're like, oh, I'm getting a salad, but it's 1,500 calories. So, anyways, this is 1,489 calories, 63 grams of fat, 60 carbs, and 159 grams of protein.
Come on, girl.
I was like, yeah, I needed that. So we have a great night. We call it early to go to bed. Everyone's tired. Wake up the next day, eating breakfast with just this gorgeous view. I'm like, man, God, this is incredible. Now, that night when we were walking around kind of getting stuff set up, I went out to like the rock face to kind of look over it. And I got emotional just thinking about like how beautiful it was and just literally being in the wilderness. Like I said, I'm always drawn to the mountains. Like my heart and my soul is drawn to the mountains. I got emotional sitting there just thinking about Mikey and Seth and Ryan and Mark and like all the guys, right? Like just thinking of September is a month for us of a lot of remember. Like, we talked about this before. Brendan Looney, Ryan Jobe, Mikey Mansour, and Seth all passed away in September.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about them. I'm missing Amanda and the kids. I'm like my body's hurt and my knees are just like shot and I'm just like frustrated with myself. But I'm also thankful for like these 3 godly men that I get to spend time with, because most of the time that we were talking was like, hey man, what do you got going on? Hey, is there anything we need to be praying for? Hey, do you want us to pray over anything for you? And like that was the majority of our conversations, was talking about God, our walk, what's going on with our faith, how's our marriage, our kids, like what do we need to be praying for? It was so refreshing to be in that type of environment, and I was just so thankful for it. And so we go to bed that night, wake up in the morning, get breakfast, and the thing, they're like, hey man, we take our time in the morning. And I'm like, thank goodness. Thank you. Thank you,
I wouldn't
Lord.
have come back if they were early risers, fast.
Hey, we got to get up
movers
at
in the morning.
4:30, eat breakfast, and go. And I'd be like, cool. Where's the final destination? I'll meet you.
We'll see you there.
So we break down.
We'll see you back at the car.
We head out,
I'll
and
dust off.
it's immediate like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up. I'm cramping again. And I told them that I was cramping. I was like, hey, I'm cramping up really bad. Thank you. Chris had given me these little gel blocks, which was on the packing list, but guess who didn't pack them? Me, because I didn't think I needed them. So again, this whole me being stupid and not following what these guys say. Hey, these are things that you need. And
Is it the electrolyte gel?
No, it was like similar, but the goo blocks.
Oh, okay,
like those little blocks that you do for
Like chews,
Yeah.
gummies.
And I was
He needed more. That boy needed much more. He needed something that I take whenever I train.
Yeah.
Which is he needed 1,000 grams of sodium an hour. That's what I was telling him.
yeah, and
1,000 milligrams.
Milligrams. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
1,000 milligrams.
I was
Whatever
like, bro.
whatever
He needs a pound of sodium an hour.
yeah. So
yeah. No.
I-
He was burning through a lot. I mean, he's 30 pounds more than me. Right. So it's like. And I burned through 1,000.
I didn't prepare and plan for this trip. I mean, that's what, like, the biggest takeaway was, like, I didn't prepare, I didn't plan, and I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't reach out to Chris and say, hey, man, explain to me this packing list. Why do you pack all these things?
Yeah.
Hey, Tyron, why do you pack all these things? Why are your lunches like this? Oh, that's because on the trail, we're not busting out a stove and eating a lunch. So I had packed for super light breakfast because I normally don't eat breakfast, and a heavy lunch and a heavy dinner. Well, when you're on the trail, it's heavy breakfast for fuel, light lunch for ease and sustainment, and then a heavy dinner. I messed that up. So we get on the trail, and I'm already instantly cramping. I'm telling Mike, I'm like, bro, I'm sorry. I can't keep up with these guys. And it got to the point where
I was so disappointed.
so I get to the.
I was like, I want to go faster, JP. Come on.
Well, he just keeps telling me, he's like, bro, don't apologize.
Stop.
I'm good with this pace.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I was slowing him down. Mike's capability to go faster than me was very apparent. But Mike, being a good friend, a good leader, is doing what he's doing. He's
You
like
don't single people out.
making
Nobody walks alone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's dangerous.
Yes. And so we catch up to them. They're taking a break. We're talking with different people. And it's very apparent that a lot of people are headed to the place that we're headed. It's a very sought-off destination.
Yeah.
It's called Thousand Lakes, right? Thousand Lakes?
Thousand Island.
Thousand Island Lakes.
Just made me think of the dressing the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Secret
man,
sauce.
that's good. And so I finally get to the point. I'm like, hey, Chris, you guys go. Because I know they also like to get to those places early because the spots will be taken up.
It's
like
important.
like the good, and that's an important thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, no. I'm like, hey. And finally I was like, Chris, I promise you, Mike and I will be there tonight. I don't know when, but I promise you, we will make it
will
there.
make it.
Before you wake up, you'll see our tents.
Why not see our tents?
Yeah. We'll be there.
We'll be in your tent.
Yeah, we might be laying outside your tent because I didn't want to set mine up.
Or someone else's by accident.
But he didn't want to leave us. They're like, no, it's fine. It's an experience. I'm like, hey, you guys go and get the good spot. I said something along those lines. You guys go get the good spot. I promise you that Mike and I will make it there. We can read a map. I had paper maps myself. I was like, I can follow the signs. I know where we're going. He's like, all right, cool. And then
they were worried we were going to turn around and go back to the car.
Yeah, they said that.
They said that on the first
times.
night. They're like, are they going to go back to the car?
Like, just drive it up the trail.
Or just slept by the car.
And so, so they take off, and Mike and I are keeping our pace. And, we stopped a few times for actual break. I was like, hey, man, I have to actually take a break. Like, let's take this ruck off a little bit. We talked with a few hikers along the way. They were awesome. And then I was talking to this one guy, and the father-daughter that was going to go do that crazy excursion. And, I was just like making fun of myself about like my weight, and the guy's like, oh, it's not a big deal. And I was like, no, actually it is, because I was like, I'm not honoring God with my body. If I'm not physically capable of doing this backpacking trip, like, I'm not honoring God with my health. I know where I should be, and I'm not where I need to be. And the guy was like, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. And it was just a cool little moment with that guy. And Tyron was being encouraging too. He's like, hey man, this backpacking trip is a good kickoff to your marathon training. And I was like, half marathon training.
Yeah,
I'm running half a marathon.
Get the details right, sir.
So we end up making it up to Thousand Island Lakes, and we get close, and then we crest over, and both Mike and I are like, bro, this is unreal. Just
10,000 feet plus elevation.
Yep. 10,000, just over 10,000 feet is the base of the lake up there, and we're like, gosh.
We started at 6,800.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah. So we get up there, and we're just like smile. We're both, you could tell like we're both refreshed. Like now they're like, okay, we're here. But then we're going, all of a sudden it's like, we get to the lake, there's a sign, and there's 4 different ways that you can go. And I'm like, I thought they would be here. In my mind.
Where are they waiting for
Where
us?
are they waiting? And I'm like, okay. Well, that trail, nope. That's the Pacific Coast Trail. No, they could have gone around the lake. I was like, but I feel like they would go this way, but then there's another option. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking around, and I see this arrow drawn in the dirt. I'm like, that has to be the arrow for us. And then I'm like looking around, and then I see they're like the a shoe print from the hike, the shoes that they're using, and I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, these are their shoes. And Mike's like, yep, and this is the arrow. I'm like, it has to be. So I'm like, cool, all right, we'll go. So we're going down that trail. Meet some older guy named Bruce who was like just off the trail, like trying to head. He's like,
Old man.
like this old guy
With a pack.
huge pack. He's like, oh, sorry
Walking faster
guys. He's
than
like, I'm just lost trying to get me down on the trail. And so we're talking with him, and then he just like boom, like takes off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all
never
right,
saw him
cool,
again.
just getting it. And then we're like, keep walking, and I'm kind of like, okay, how far do we go? And Mike and I were talking about like, how far do we go until we just camp, or because now we're also at a point where like we have 0 cell phone service, so I can't even like reach out to them. I can't do anything, and
It's getting dark.
yeah, you could tell the lights coming, and then all of a sudden they crest up over it. They're like, hey, we're like, oh gosh, okay,
Relief.
That's what they do. Like I was telling them, like either they're going to be running to us because what they do is they'll go set up, and then get our spot marked out, get a little setup going, and then they'll come back to help. That's just what they do. So it's either they're going to be coming towards us or they're going to come up behind us, be like, hey, dum like
wrong way.
back this way, But
Yeah,
I knew they were
hand
going
us your packs. We'll
I
take 'em
knew
back
we
to
were going to
camp.
see them at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And so all this didn't come up. I'm happy. I'm like, all right, cool. And they're like, hey guys, give us your packs. I'm like, no, bro, like we're good. They're like, we got a little bit of ways to go to the camp. I'm like, okay, cool. And so we just go. We get the camp, and they call it the Granite Rock Penthouse because
Yeah.
we had this huge area, and it's on this granite rock that had multiple layers and levels. So we get everything set up. And they're like, hey man, we're gonna be here for a couple days. We're gonna do this is gonna be our base camp. We're gonna do a bunch of hikes from here, day hikes. And like at that moment when they're like, we're gonna do day hikes from here, I was like, you guys are. I'm taking a full day to rest and recover.
like, yeah, maybe we'll go summit that tomorrow. And I'm like, summit?
Summit the
Summit, like,
13,000
yeah,
foot.
I'm like,
okay.
I'll watch you guys.
So,
Send us pictures.
but it was cool because
I'll let y'all do it,
Yeah.
and then I'll take the pictures as if I was there.
Yep.
that's what Mike said. He's like, I'm just gonna save, copy, post that
Yep.
picture.
Screenshot it and then send it so that the metadata
And
also says Mike
I won't
Mitchell.
I won't put anything. I just won't have any comment. So just let people assume that I was there.
But what was encouraging was their attitude. And I instantly started feeding off their positive attitude. They're in a good mood. They're like, come on, man, let us serve you. Like, dude, bro, we want to serve you. We're here to serve you. And I'm like, you guys are our pastors. You're always serving us. Let us serve you. Like, that's what I'm thinking. And
Yeah.
I
I'll
didn't
take
say
your
that.
pack.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, wait,
Even
never
though it's
mind.
already
It's
there.
empty and you're set up and everything's good. And
I'm gonna go grab your pack and move it for you.
It's the thought that counts.
they were, I think they were about 2 hours ahead of us.
No, they weren't. 2
Hour and a
hours.
half. I think it was an hour and a half.
Did they say
Yeah, I asked T.
you did?
He was like
Okay.
about hour and a half, hour 45.
Wow. That
Bro,
was a long
I
time.
was
We stopped
slow.
a couple times though.
I had to stop a couple times for sure. Mike Mitchell did not. Mike Mitchell stopped with me, supporting me, but I was riding the struggle bus. So, anyways, their attitude was super contagious, and he's like, "Hey man, we got a spot here. We got a spot here." I'm like, "All right, cool." So we set up the tents, and then we just chill. And it was just like, hey, we're going to set up these clotheslines. We can hang our clothes. Like, we're just going to chill. We're just getting everything set up. We go put our chairs down in this one little spot.
We were like Harry and Lloyd getting to Aspen. Like snot all over us, like just like we're
Holding each other
there
on the scooter.
Yeah, like pretty much we were
Yeah.
holding each other, like playing like please find us.
That's
So
awesome.
we can stop.
So Chris and Tyron, they go pump water again. They have this big 10-liter bag that you pump the water into, so you bring it up to the camp, and you use that to
Also
refill
heavy
your
that they
water.
carry.
Yeah, and they're just like no factor doing all this stuff. Bring it up, and from there we for cooking and resupply water and everything else like that. And we have dinner, and it was really cool that night. We just started talking about like, hey, what's going on in your life? What do you need from the Lord? Like, what can we be praying for? And guys were just like talking through stuff. And I had something that was on my heart, but I was just like, all right, I'll share it. Maybe not tonight. Okay, maybe I should. But anyways, it was an awesome night. I didn't share it that night. And so we
He let me share.
yeah, so no, Chris shared some. Everyone shared
That's
some
what I was going to
stuff.
say. It was
like I
it
definitely
wasn't
shared
just
some stuff.
It
but
wasn't.
it wasn't the thing.
It wasn't them. It wasn't just us, right? It was us as friends, all four of us.
Yeah.
We're sharing what's going on in our lives. It wasn't them. That's what's neat about that is you know, they were all together. I don't want to say they brought themselves down to our level, but they shed the pastor
yes.
role, and they were like, we're friends here, and we're brothers. We're gonna lean on each other. Iron sharpens iron, kind of thing.
Dude, it was really cool. So awesome night. Next morning we would wake up, kind of figuring out what we're gonna do. Slept a little bit later, I think. I don't remember.
Chris didn't, but
yeah,
he gets up early.
So we were kind of musing around, get breakfast, and then we were like, cool, let's go do this day hike. This is this area. And we're like, all right, yeah, this is going to be awesome. So we go do the day hike, and it was awesome. It was beautiful. It was about 4.5 miles total there and back. And, you know, we get close to where we thought we wanted to go, and we just went off the trail, and we found this, like, big rock face that was just overlooking this lake. And, I mean, a good little portion, I was, like, completely off the trail, and then we get up there. And we're just like, all right, this is a good place. And there was like legitimate, like 4 little spots that you could like sit back, relax, you know. And on the day hike, like guys are just wearing
That's where we were.
Like little backpacks. Now, I didn't have a little backpack with me, lesson learned. So I stripped out my ruck to bring, so that I had water and whatever. So we go
stove and everything.
No, I did not bring my stove. You guys kept saying that. I did not. I was going to.
He took like 3 pounds out of his pack and then carried it.
And then carried the rest. Yeah, but everybody else was using like the day trippers or something like that.
I had a Camelback on.
He had a Camelback that he used, and so it was awesome. So we go up there and we're eating lunch, and Tyron's like, when's the last time you think like a group of men were up here just hanging out, chilling, eating lunch, talking? I'm like, never. Like never.
On this rock.
On this rock, never. It was awesome. We're in the middle of nowhere. And so again, we're just talking about what's on our hearts. What do we need prayers for? What, you know, it's the same thing. And so then we head back, and when we're headed, so we decide to head back. And the reason why is, well, one, we need to get back. But the other reason that Chris and Tyron were calculating is, hey, there's storms rolling in. Because earlier that morning, we were talking to hikers that were headed up into that like Summit Mountain Pass that we were super close to.
They had the gear. They had like
the rope, the rock, like the picks, the helmet, everything.
They were going to do some severe stuff.
And they told us, hey, there's some storms rolling in. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. Not thinking about it, because we looked at the forecast and it wasn't that bad. But as you know, or maybe you don't know, but in the Sierra Nevadas, that weather can change like that. Yeah. And that it might do something can turn into a legitimate storm that people die in. Now, the 4 of us, I wasn't worried about that. No. Absolutely no matter what, the 4 of us were going to get out.
7 days plus out there.
We would have been fine. Yeah. But it would have been miserable. And Mike had to be back, and we're just trying to figure out all these things. So we decide, like, when we get back, we're like, hey, we're going to leave. We're going to head back to the car. And I'm like,
we're going to start our journey back to the car.
Yeah, we're going to start our journey back to the car. I'm like, the car
2 days
that's 10.5 miles away after the 4.5 mile down. Yeah. I'm like, all right, cool, whatever.
And it's 4 p.m.
But we're going to start it, and then and it's in the evening. It's 4 p.m. like Mike's saying. And they're like, hey, we want to pack up. The goal is to be out of here by 5. So we're like, all right, cool. Trying to pack everything up. Again, because I have too much stuff when I had to unpack there, now I'm having to try to break everything down, repack. Yeah. They're helping me out with it. We get everything. We leave at 5:30. And it's like, okay, cool. We're going to go back, and Chris and Tyron have some ideas of where we're going to stop on the way back. Like, hey, do we push here, eat, and then push and camp, or do we do it all at one? Like, what do we do? And we're actually keeping a good, decent little pace. Like, I'm actually able to keep up. And Chris, just with his wisdom, is like, hey, man, he doesn't want anybody to get hurt. And this is when somebody would get hurt. Like, we're already tired. I'm tired. And at this point, now they know I'm hurting. What they don't know is day 1, the start of day 2, and throughout day 2, I kept monitoring my pulse ox on my watch, and it was steadily dropping. And it got to the point where I told Mike, I'm like, hey, it's at 85%, bro. And he's like, and my urine's darker. My kidneys are hurting. Time to go. I'm cramping. Yeah. And this is not the time for me to push through the night to go out, but we also have to. Like, we can't, we could have stayed there, but we knew it wasn't smart. So now we're cutting the trip short early. I'm pissed off that we're cutting it early because I feel like I screwed this up, and I feel like in my mind, I'm like, oh, they're leaving early because they don't think I'm going to be able to push out of here on Sunday and Monday in a timely manner, so we're trying to lengthen it out. Again, this is my own self-made up thing. Yeah. So we're pushing out, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to keep up, and we're doing a decent job. And Tyron's attitude is so contagious. he is so he is so just. He's just this guy, him and Chris, that you just thrive off of him. And Tyron's like kind of feeling it, and he says something along the lines like, okay, hey, we can stop here, we can stop by the lake, or we can just push all the way to the car through the night. And I'm like, let's do that.
Yeah.
And Mike's like, I'm in. Something along those lines.
I think I said, I'm with you.
I'm with you.
I'm with you regardless. I don't care. We can stop. We can go.
Said. And so we're like, all right, cool. So we're going to keep going. Well,
Mike's
Chris.
just a billy goat over there.
Oh,
just
Mike 100%.
I don't think I'm a billy goat.
They're the billy goats. And so, but Mike's like, hey,
I want a billy goat in a few hours.
I'm game for whatever. So we're pushing. And Chris, he has this amazing gift of discernment. And so does Tyron and Mike as well. And he's just like, man, he's trying to be cautious so that
his face said it all.
So I don't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But you also know that he's like, I'm down for whatever. So he said it multiple times, and it kind of got to the point where I think Mike and I both, like Tyron asked one more time, and we both said something along the lines like, I don't know why you keep asking. Like, we're game. Let's go. And they're like,
stop
okay.
asking.
Well,
you're making me question myself.
Yeah,
because you keep asking me.
What we didn't know is, and this is good leadership, is not around us. When they pushed ahead of us again, Chris is like, Tyron, he's like, you can't say it that way to those two guys. There's zero chance they're going to say no when you say it that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was true because the way he said it was enthusiastic, and he wasn't challenging us.
No, but he's
all.
like, I ain't afraid. Let's go.
He was like, I'm not
He
afraid.
said, when I'm committed to coming out, let's get out.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
he had flipped the switch. So had Mike, and Chris was like, all right, cool, let's go. And we were like trying to figure out, and Tyron was cool. He's like, man, I'm just trying to like get wisdom. He's like, God, give me some. I was like, cool, let's just pray about it. And so we prayed about it. Well, what had happened right before then is I had hyperextended my knee pretty bad. And I look back at Mike, I'm like, don't say a word. And he's like, it's like, okay. You're like, you're not going to say anything.
How much is it worth to you?
Yeah, how much is it worth to you? And so we start talking, and I'm like, cool, let's just pray about it. And so I prayed real quick with the group, and I was just, I don't remember everything that I said. It wasn't a super long prayer, but it wasn't a short one. But I remember in the middle of the prayer when I was like, God, give us wisdom and guidance for what we need to be doing. Give us, energy and, restoration. As I was praying, I felt this warmness in my knee that I had just hyperextended. Like I just felt this warmness, like warm honey, like in my knee, on my knee. And I was like, oh man, that feels good. So we get done with the prayer, we push off, and I'm all excited. I lean back to Mike, and I tell him, I'm like, hey, this is what happens. And he smiles like, that's awesome. And then, but then the Mike Mitchell comes out, and he goes, or it could be the fact that all your ligaments are torn and there's fluids rushing to your knee right now.
That, or it was you've lost control
of your bladder,
and that was urine trickling down your leg.
So
lots of different possibilities, same sensation. So
we're pushing out, and Mike, a man of wisdom, goes, "Hey guys, we should have a contingency plan in case we get separated again. Like, what point do we stop? Where do we stop at?" And so we come up with that plan,
which is we'll see you at the car.
Yeah, we'll see you at the car.
Like we all know how to get off the mountain. If we get separated, the two groups know how to get somewhere.
Yeah.
So they bust out their headlamps. They take off. Mike and I are going, and for a long time, Mike and I didn't use our headlamps. We're just using the ambient light. We had a beautiful moon, and for him and I, it was like, cool. We got to be a little more intentional with our steps. Our pace doesn't change, but we're just being smarter with our steps. And we could see, honestly, it was like we were fine.
Yeah.
And then got to a point where it's like, hey, we should probably use headlamps because now we're
slow.
we're getting slower, and we're in the middle of the forest now.
Can't see.
Yeah.
And we're not on the rock faces. We can't see anymore. So we put the headlamp on, and all of a sudden we see these like string of light, because we keep talking like, I wonder where they're going to stop. Where are we going to meet up with them? And we see these string of lights because they had these solar powered lantern lights that they brought on the hike, and we see them, and it was like, refreshing. Well, Mike's looking up at them, and that distracts him because we had been very heads down intentional, and all of a sudden he distracts, and I just hear this pop. He completely rolls his ankle and tears everything in his ankle, I think, or popped it. I don't know what he did. So much to the point where the pressure broke his walking stick pole. Like the clamp that kept it from collapsing, he breaks that. And I look back at him, are you okay? He goes, don't say a word. And I'm like, okay, we're even. Like, you're not talking. I'm not talking.
There was colorful language there.
We get to the bridge. We're getting set up. He's hurting. I can tell he's hurting.
I can't even talk. Like, it hurts so bad I couldn't talk.
Yeah. And he goes, hey, bro, can can you make me dinner with one of your meals? And from a weight standpoint, I'm like, absolutely, I'll make everybody meals. Like, let me dump these
Like,
meals.
I can't open my pack right now.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so he's not, and so we get him.
I just wasn't gonna eat.
Yeah, and so we get down by the river, and it's a cool little setup. The river, we're literally on these rocks, like these flat rock area by the river. Underneath it, we have the lights from the lanterns, and we cook our meal, and we kind of rest a little bit, and then it's like, all right, hey, cool, we're going to push out. And it was like, hey, once you get to this point, you turn right here. I'm like, cool, I got it in my map. I got it in my phone. Like, I had taken a picture of the map so I can zoom in and read the train, and Mike and I were doing that. So we take off, and they take off, and then we link up at a spot, and then it was getting to the point where they were starting to get, they could feel it as well, and so they weren't pulling off as far as normal, and I think they're also like watching like the pace for us, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So we get to this one point, and I'm like, dude, this is the stupidest trail ever. I'm like, who made this trail? They're an idiot. It's hard to follow. You know, I have my headlamp on, everything else, and then we hear like, hey, over here, and we're like, all right. So like we're going over there, and I told Mike, I'm like, this is the stupidest trail. I was like, I'm not coming back up this. There's no way people hike up and down this.
I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, I was like,
that's what he said.
I was like, this is wrong. Like, this is not the right way. Well, they're down there, so we go down there, and then so we're talking, we take off, and then it was quickly like Chris is like, because he had this app, Backcountry, which you know works off satellites even without service, and he goes, "Hey T, we're off the trail," and I'm like on the inside, I'm like, I knew this. I knew this
we're coming
wasn't
down
right.
a really steep, rocky granite
Like 4
slope.
points of contact.
Yeah, I can't
Just
put
to shuffle your butt down to get down stuff.
Good grief.
I can't put any weight on my left foot.
And they don't know this.
They don't know it.
And so we're like, all right, we got to get back up. And I'm like, and I remember I leaned my poles into the dirt, and I just leaned forward, and I had my chest on it, and I just like,
At this point, I'm laughing.
okay, I'm good. And I just took a deep
I just
breath.
do better. I do
hysterics.
better. Like, I was just like, oh, what's really funny is JP said he's not going back up that hill, but guess what we're going to do?
Yeah. Gotta turn around.
So we get back up it. We push.
It
We
was
push all
hard.
the way through
It
the
was
night.
hard.
Yeah, and there was a lot of times where even T and Chris were like, bro, how much more incline do we have? Because we were told, hey, once you get to this point, it's all downhill. That was a lie.
Yeah.
That was an absolute lie.
That was the one guy we didn't like on the trail that told us that.
Yes. And
Because he straight up said, he's like, yeah, it's so much better. There's not as much up and down. That hike, just the trek out was
10 and a half miles.
10 point something miles.
10.5.
It was 1,300 foot of elevation gain, and then 3,200 foot of elevation drop.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't all downhill. It was, 1,200 foot of elevation gain is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you think that you're not really going to be going down at all or up.
So we're going. My headlamp goes out. So now I'm like trying to stay close between Chris and Mike, my battery, because I bought this new headlamp for this trip. Again, got lazy, got complacent, didn't fully charge it because it was working. And when I turned it on, it showed that it had all the bars of light. Well, that happens when you get something brand new, and it quickly goes down to 3 out of 4.
Yep.
And so now the headlamp's out, and I'm like, this is stupid. I'm so pissed off myself. And they're like, hey, no, you can. And I'm like, nope, I'm good. We're good. And then Chris's goes out. And so now Tyron has a light at the front, Mike at the back. And we're in terrain that legitimately has a couple 100 feet drop to the right, like the whole time. And it's like, hey, don't even push your pole in those rocks or bushes near it because you'll slip off. And so we're like trying to stay close. We get to the point where we stop, and the headlamps that we have, he figured this out. If you plug it into a portable charging pack, it will run while it's charging. So at least now we have a little more light. We're keeping up. We get down to the bottom. I run out of water. And so there's a few times
I didn't see that coming.
I was like, yeah, see, Mike, why did I run out of water? Because I was drinking all my water.
Because you didn't fill
jerk.
up all your 3
No.
liters.
Okay. He's right on that. I had 2.5.
Dude,
I had 2.5.
this goes back to
I had 2.5.
I used to take care of 30 children in the Marine Corps. So taking care of one child is actually really easy to do. So I was able to just watch everything that he did.
Yeah.
Which was, but I just didn't say anything.
One time
I just let him walk into
I was like,
it.
hey, Mike, what's that water taste like? So he gives me a drink of water. And
I
then,
was like, I can't wait to have your cough now.
yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that. I was like, well, I did, so I'm not drinking any more water. Thank you.
So we get close to the bottom. I get another drink, and then Tyron's like has a pump out, and they're waiting at this the stream that we're a little creek that we're crossing really close to the bottom. Everyone refills the water because now we also have a 2.5 hour drive back to South Lake Tahoe. So we get down at 12:30 to the vehicles. And so we're unpacking our bags, trying to change out, like, okay, do we find a new fresh shirt? Like, what do we do?
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, South Lake Tahoe has a bunch of casinos. We'll just get a room at a casino, or a hotel. We'll find points. We'll be good. We don't plan on coming out this early. And so I push out. I'm sorry, we're driving back. And by the time we finally get service, like I start calling places. I don't know what was going on up there. There was not one room available. And our ETA is going to be 3:20 in the morning to South Lake. And so we're talking on the drive, and Tyron and I had some really good conversations. Chris and Mike were having good conversations, like making sure everyone's staying awake, and we're all good. We had caffeine and everything. So we get to Tahoe, finally find a motel. Like, cool, we'll stay there for the night. Next day, call my best friend's mom that I grew up with, Chris Eaton, and his mom they have a cabin in South Lake. And I was like, hey, is it available for me to rent it for the week? And she's like, of course, come on up. We're here. I'm like, oh, cool. So we go grab lunch. We go to the cabin. We spend about, a couple hours just talking with John and Kim and fellowshipping with them. And then we push out to go, check out Emerald Bay, look out, and then we grab dinner. And then the next day we're like, all right, cool. Let's go do like a day hike and let's go figure out some stuff. Well, the storms have definitely rolled in. So where we were at is now snowing. And now we have rain in South Lake Tahoe. And we're like trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And we ended up driving all the way around Lake Tahoe, went to Donner Lake, went to Truckee, got to show them a lot of the places I used to go to growing up, a lot of really cool lookouts and everything else like that. And, Tyron busted up his knee a little bit on a rock when we were out on the water, like taking pictures. And,
what is this reaction?
Well, because it started raining and we're on granite rocks, which are very slippery. And so he was going from one rock to the next, slipped. His knee hit so hard, he thought he broke his kneecap.
Oh my!
Because his other foot slipped into the water and he hit. It wasn't just like an evil. It would be like you stepping from here down to that carpet. That's the distance. And then as you step there, one leg slips completely and all your weight crashes on your knee on that granite rock.
Oh man!
So he's in a lot of pain. We're like, oh gosh. So we get back.
Imagine.
I'm going to be transparent. We all laughed really hard.
I mean, yes, we laughed because he was not laughing yet, but we knew he was. But he was kind of laughing in between.
He was laughing at the first, and then the pain got worse and worse and worse and worse.
Man.
And then we were like, oh. And I was like, sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I'm sorry for laughing so hard. Not sorry for laughing.
Yeah.
Because it was funny, but I'm sorry for laughing as hard as I did.
Yeah. So we end up getting out of there, like, all right, cool, let's just head back. And it was about a 35-minute drive of no talking. Like, everyone's just smoked. Tyron's in a bunch of pain. We get back to the cabin, and he's like, so we're kind of like, everyone's showering, changing, figuring out what we're going to do. And Chris and Tyron were like, hey, let's just grab a pizza here and just watch a movie and chill. And I'm like, dude, awesome, sounds good. He's got his knee wrapped in ice. And I'm like, man, this is bad. So we go grab pizza, and we're sitting and talking, and they were like, hey man, like let's talk and work through some stuff. Like, that's like, this would be a wasted trip if we didn't like spend time praying with each other and praying over each other. And it was awesome that night. And that was, I was like, hey, I got something I need, a prayer. I need help. I'm trying to get rid of, I've been holding on to this thing. I can't kick it. I don't know what it is. I was frustrated, and I'm not going to go into the details of it. Maybe another time when I know we're getting ready to wrap it up, but it was just awesome as I'm sitting there talking. And just like Mike was talking about, they're his spiritual leaders. I 100% can like see why. Because Chris, who I don't really know before this trip, now we're getting to know each other better. Mm-hmm. And I'm like explaining all these things that's on my heart. And it's like he's reading my mail, man. He knows everything about what's going on. The gift of discernment in him, very prophetic guy, for sure. And he just starts going, just like nailing things. And I'm like, Yep, and I'm in tears, just trying to work through these things, and he was just like so encouraging, and Tyron's kind of just listening to everything, and I'm like, T's got to have something to say. I'm like, why is he not talking? I'm like, oh, this man. And then T was just like, hey, and this, I've already had a lot of respect for Tyron, but this like just brought it to the next level because he was just like, hey, I don't really know how to say this the right way. It could come off the wrong way, but I was like, dude, just say it, like whatever you want to say. And he was just like, I feel like And I was like, and when he said it at first, I was a little like, no. But then as he kept explaining, I was like, yep. And again, he just, it's like he read my mail. And it was something that I was doing, not consciously, I subconsciously was doing it because of insecurities that I had, because of previous stuff and issues and wounds. And he was just exposing it so that we could work through it.
Yeah.
And I'm just in tears like, yep. Yeah, you're right. And Mike was like, hey man, I feel this way. And what I realized, this is when I realized how good of a friend Mike Mitchell is to me, and just in general to people, but especially for him and I now, is as Chris and Tyron are working through this stuff with me, he has tears in his eyes in a matter of compassion for me. And he was like, hey bro, he's like, here's some of the things that have been on my heart too. And I'm like, yep. So I worked through all this stuff.
Not as prophetic.
But it was
empathetic.
I
Is an
love
important
you,
thing.
man. Like this.
Yeah.
and then so just some, worked through some stuff for Mike and Tyron, and we were just praying over each other, listening to praise and worship. It was a 4-hour session, bro.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome.
And that was them pouring into us. It wasn't we didn't reciprocate back to them, really.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, but that was by design. That's what they wanted, like that was a ministry moment for them to us. It was like to me, it was a gift.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was a gift that was like, oh, this whole trip, the cost of travel, logistics, the cost of us both not working our businesses, not making money, I would do that 10 times over for that moment.
Yeah.
And so the next day, Mike flies back early, and then we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. We're able to change up our flights to fly back a little bit early too. Went down, got to see my grandmother, spent an hour just talking with my grandmother. And everyone I've told that to is like, whoa, you're lucky. Like after 20 minutes, usually that woman's like, hey, I need to read, because she's like, she's really old now and it's hard. But just sat with my grandmother and just literally sat next to her, like, just being able to talk with her and hold her hand and just spend that time with her was awesome. Went out to
getting
dinner.
That picture was really cool,
Yeah.
especially like as many times as we've talked about her on the show and on Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, where you're like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to get out there is, and all that. So that,
and those
that
guys
impromptu visit was
made
super
that
cool.
a priority. Like Tyron and Chris knew that, and they're like, no, we're going early. You need to go see your grandmother. So the whole trip was amazing. Went out to dinner with because my grandmother stays with Mike and my Aunt Connie and Uncle Mike. They've been in ministry for over 40 years. So for them to be able to sit and talk with Chris and Tyron while I was talking with my grandmother separate was awesome. We go out to dinner with my Uncle Mike, and it was just a great night, and go to the hotel, and then talk through stuff, gave the guys hugs, and I got, I was on an earlier flight the next day because of, seat restrictions on flights, but we all got home, and man, it was awesome. It was an incredible trip, but there's so many things from that trip that we could pull from. And I know we'll talk about this again in a future episode, and we got to wrap it up, but I'm just thankful for that time. Like the biggest thing was just the time with the guys, the time out in the wilderness, the time of prayer, and knowing that you're with guys that are like, hey, I care about you. I love you. I want you to be a better version of who you are when you come back from this trip was impactful. And it just reminds me of like what I have with you and Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, and just how also thankful that, like, that's who my wife is too. Like she wants me to be a better man and a better husband, and she wants to pour into me. And it was just a good reminder of what I need to be doing as a husband and as a father to pour back into my wife, my kids, and my friends as well. So Mike, what else you got from that trip, my man?
I think so. We had a few, like him and I had a lot of like, just, we don't have to talk kind of moments. We can just look at each other and know what's being said. But something that came up was, I am a homebody. Like I will not, you have to force me to go do stuff. Right. So my wife is the social coordinator in our house. Otherwise I ain't going. And so, on this trip specifically, Tyron and Chris have to they have to really pull on me. It's not like I'm just dying to leave my house and leave my home for 5-6 nights. And so at one point, Tyron said, in front of all of us, he's like, man, I'm so thankful that you're my friend, thankful that you're here. He goes, he just said, I know this is not a trip that you normally would take. This is not in your wheelhouse for a vacation. And I was just like, first I was kind of like, no, But really, it's true, right? Like, because I don't like being uncomfortable. I'm a creature of comfort now, right? So like I've been comfortable for so long that going outside and living in the wilderness is just not on my to-do list, right? But you know, I didn't really know what to say because I don't want them to be offended that's kind of true. But really the nuts and bolts of it was my response was, hey T, I love you and I love being with you much more than I dislike being uncomfortable. So, you know, my love to be with you, my desire to be friends with you and hang out with Chris and JP is far outweighs me being uncomfortable for a little bit. So, you know, the takeaway for me on that was, you know, don't get comfortable being comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I get, and my friends pull me out of my comfort zone every year. You know what I mean? My wife can do it too, but my wife had to encourage me. We were on the way to the airport, and I'm kind of like mopey, POP, kind of like, you know, like I don't want to go sleep on the ground. It's going to be cold. Like, you know, because I'm just a big baby, right? Like, I just don't want to be cold. And so I'm kind of pouting. She goes, God has given you 3 friends that are amazing people, and he's also giving you an opportunity to go spend some time with them. Like, what is your problem? Why are you complaining? And I'm like, because I don't like being cold. You know, you know, that was my only response, right? So I was just being a big baby, and you know, that's. I don't know if that's encouragement. I don't know if that's life lessons, but you know, we all, I think, get really comfortable being comfortable. Yeah. And my friends, just like JP and Chris and Tyron and a few others that I consider close friends, are really good at drawing me out and forcing me to go do things that are uncomfortable for myself, which grow me not only physically but spiritually as a husband, as a father. You know, it makes me better. The whole trip, we were leaning into each other and learning things about just me being a father, the things that I'm doing wrong, the things that I, you know, probably should be doing better, the way that I treat my wife. You know, I'm not mean to her, but they're like, hey, Chris, I mean, in the car, me and Chris talked the whole time. And in the first night, he just dove into me and he's just like, brother, you need to honor your wife. You know, he's like, you're not being a jerk, but you're not honoring your wife the right way here, or what, you know, he says it a lot. What I hear you saying is, because he'll just ask you question, and then you respond, and then he's really just digging. He's getting you to say the things that you don't want to say, or say the things you don't normally say, and then he comes back and says, what I hear you saying is this. And it's a perspective that I can't see, because in my mind and in my heart, I'm justifying, or I'm covering up, or I'm masking a certain thought over a certain thing, which is what we're going through right now. And he's turning it around and saying, my perspective is, you're afraid. You're this. Why are you afraid? Why are you this? And so it's just like, if I didn't have friends like that, if I didn't have friends that encouraged me to be uncomfortable, I wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't be the man that I am.
Yeah. So
long answer to a short question. Those are kind of my final thoughts on that. And JP wasn't as big of a baby as he makes himself out to be either. He just didn't drink enough water. At the end of the day, he was short on sodium and water, and if he would have had those things, wouldn't have been as big of an issue as he's making it out to be.
Wow.
Because it really wasn't as big. His pain was an issue, right? Your body not working, but it gave me validation, because last year I got hurt. And last year my body didn't do what it's supposed to do, and I'm sitting here like I had the same feelings that he had, like I'm wasting their trip. It's hard to get the permit to go do the Wonderland 100, and I ruined the trip on day 2 because I got hurt, right? And they don't care. They never said anything. They don't hold any bitterness or resentment for that. But
I had it back.
Yeah, they invited me back, but it was more like, we got to see. You know, they were kind of like, we're going to give you an opportunity to redeem yourself. And little did they know the opportunity to redeem myself was something that was right along my bread and butter, which is doing things at night. That's what I love to do. That's where I live. That's where I'm comfortable. I'd rather move at night.
Yeah.
Even under weight, even under duress, I'd just rather move at night.
I think that was also the biggest, not the biggest, but a big factor for you and I was when we were moving at night, it brought us back to our prime and our peak. And moving at night was awesome. And there's a few views that were like, good Lord. And Chris is like, man, it's amazing. And Mike goes, can't see this during the day.
Can't experience this in the daylight.
So kind of validating, hey, I'm glad we're pushing through. And Chris is like, dude, I love pushing through the night. This is awesome. So it was a really cool way to end. It was like a legit gut check. Hey, 10.5 miles through the night, made it back. It was awesome. But Lucas, what do you got, man?
Well, it's interesting to me the offline conversations that we have about all this stuff and then hearing the full story, right? Because Mike has a half Ironman that's coming up in, like 2 weeks?
16 days.
Yeah. So
when this comes out,
right,
1 week.
Yeah, it'll be
so
a
much
week from when
trouble.
this is released, right? So but like doing this is counter to not just like what your normal is and where your comfort zone is, but it also is counterproductive for your training for a competition. But this, these kind of trips mean so much to you in that way. It just, I think for me, that adds to all of this stuff, because that wasn't something you realized until we were talking about it beforehand of like, oh yeah, this was probably something that also was not great for my training on for this and this kind of thing.
A swollen ankle, it's hard to run on.
Yeah.
I've got 13 miles to run this weekend.
Right. So yeah,
It's a training event, by the way.
Yeah, it of course it is. It's one of those things though that like it speaks volumes about the types of relationships that you guys build. And so what I want to know is like, what do y'all do to be intentional about building these types of relationships?
You want to do it first?
I was going to say, I think the easiest answer is be willing to do hard things with your friends that are going to push you physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And understand that, like, hey, it's a one team, one fight mentality. And that's what I really got out of this trip was one team, one fight. Because day one, when I was physically not capable of making it to the final destination, could I kept pushing a couple more hours? Probably. But I definitely would not have made it. I don't think I would have. I don't know. The way my body was reacting and cramping up, Mike, I don't think I would have. In my mind, I would like to think, oh, yeah, I could have pushed through. But I just wasn't. And they did
You would have.
not.
It would just hurt you.
Yeah, but they did not care. They did not care because at the end of the day, it's about us doing it together and experiencing life together. And I think, to me, what I get from that is be intentional, like what we're doing for the To Honor Those run. Mm-hmm. I'm doing a half marathon. You're doing a half marathon. Josh Strasburger's doing a half marathon.
Allegedly.
Cody Gandy and Rob Jones are doing the full marathon. Cody's wearing a weight vest while he's running it next to Rob. Aiden, my son, is like, hey, I'll do a half marathon with you and Lucas and Josh. And so, like, you have an 18-year-old kid who's never run that far who's like, yeah, I'll do it with you guys for this reason. My wife and my kids and my in-laws are doing the 5K.
Yeah, Kirsten signed up with him.
Your wife is doing the 5K.
Mm-hmm.
My
She's
buddy
gonna be wearing one baby and pushing the other one.
My buddy Dane Heidelman, he heard me talking about it, and he signed up for the half marathon.
Yeah.
And his wife is going to do the 5K with the kids, with our wives and kids. My buddy Michael Peterson, he heard about it. He's like, I'll do the half marathon with you guys. He's like, this is perfect. It's right at the end of 75 hard. I've never run that far in my life. Might as well do it. And so it's like all these people that are like, hey, we're going to do this. And now we have this group that's coming together, and it's like, I'm sure my parents will probably do the 5K. And then, it's going to be frustrating is like, well, my dad, your leg, be smart. But at the end of the day, who am I to take that away from him? If he wants to do walk a 5K with the group, even though he's still recovering from that injury, he's going to do it because it's something hard and difficult and good for him mentally. Yeah. And I think that's what brings people together.
Can you ask your question again? Make sure I understood it right.
Yeah. So what do you guys do to develop these kind of friendships? Like how are you intentional about developing these friendships? I think was the question.
Right. Okay. So I have a few things. So I'm very intentional with who I spend my time with. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm rude to people, but I'm very picky with who you are, and what your character is. You can find out really quick if somebody's trying to take from you or pour into you. So, and I'm not saying, I'm not trying to say like, if I think you're this, I'm not going to be nice to you. But when I really spend time with people, away from my wife, away from my child, I want to be with people who are just as intentional as I am about being around me or with me. So I want to be around a friend that brings value to me, but I also desire greatly to add value to their life. However it is, I use whatever I'm good at to just serve them, and not like, I just want to be a good friend. And if they're receptive of that or not. And so I build relationships on, I have a decent way or a decent ability to look at someone and be like, yes, I want to spend time with you, or no. Like, yeah, I'll be friendly with you, but I'm not going to. So like with you guys, or like trying to have lunch with you, or being friends with JP. Right when I met him, we all know, right? Like I think I said it before on the previous podcast. I'm not a big fan of Navy SEALs, right? Like my initial thought with Navy SEAL is like, I don't know, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not because I'm a jerk. It's just I just my personality doesn't always get along with him. But when I meet JP, it's an immediate. That's my brother right there. Yeah. So it's not like, and I think I've told him before, I don't really care what your past is. I care who you are, and you're my friend. So it's just stuff like that. Being a good friend, being available, being coachable. And that goes both ways. How coachable are you? Are you going to come to me with something and lean on me? Or if I come to you and I want to lean on you for something, how are you going to receive that? How are you going to come back to me with that? Just being an anchor point for me in my life. Are you going to be a rock for me? Can I stand upon you, or can I lean upon your foundation that you have in Jesus in the way that you live your life? So I'm really lucky with the people that I get put around. And it's funny, you put yourself with one person that's like that. Those people tend to have people that are like that. Yeah. And then so it's just like, you were at my birthday party, my 40th birthday party, and there's some heavy hitters in that group, right? That was
crazy.
So like, that's because of that one person that I started with, and then and his name was Chris Taylor, and then his relationships, and so you got to be intentional, right, with people, but you also have to be intentional with who you decide to spend your time with.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does. This is one of the things that we're talking with the young guys in our church about. Is they are, I guess technically they're young Gen Z, and like borderline Gen Alpha. Maybe one of them is in there, and they're so isolated, right? And the fact that like we're doing a men's, a young men's Bible study, and we're forcing them to do things like build relationships, or to call a younger guy, or send a text message to one of the underclassmen to try to get them to just get some feedback, or telling them like, hey, you need to go, here's a list of all of the men in our church that right? I'm like, well, I don't know any of the men in our church, so we have these two guys in particular that we're going through this with, and they list 40 guys that are in our church. I was like, okay, cool. So you don't know any of these guys, but you're able to like rattle off all their names.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, well, we don't. It's like, so just start praying about it. Well, one of the questions that came up in relation to like being intentional about developing relationships is whether or not it is less meaningful to schedule time together. Right? That is it less meaningful whenever you say, hey, listen, we're going to have a Monday morning call at 8 a.m. and we're just going to touch base every week. And whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's, an hour, is that less meaningful? And one of the guys immediately was like, yeah, because you're doing it because you have to, not because you're thinking about it. And our other guy who's a little bit younger was like, yeah, but I had to think about you in order to do this. Like I was thinking about you enough to carve this time out for you every week. And in order to do it. And so there was a good discussion about intentionality, and at what point does that sort of genuine and authentic nature of a friendship actually develop and what happens there. And I think the stuff that you guys are talking about is not only key, but where do you make it? Where are you purposefully intentional, even outside of the the fun things that you get to do?
No, I think you put that in the calendar. That's actually a sign of respect, because it's like, I'm making you a priority.
Yeah.
I'm putting you in my calendar to make you a priority. Now, not everybody has a life that they have to live based off their calendar, and that's fine. I do. You do. You do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. and so I know like that's the thing. Like when Mike and I were talking, he's like, "Oh yeah, we have a dinner coming up with just our wives soon." And Amanda was talking about it, and it's I can't remember the exact date. Oh, it's I know the date now. And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a Saturday after this. You're gonna be good." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. It's good. It's gonna be in the evening. I'm good to go. Like, dude, let's lock it in." And it's the same thing. Amanda was just like talking yesterday. She's like, "Hey, have you heard from your parents recently?" I'm like, "Well, not much. I've been on the hike." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, I haven't either." She's like, "I need to reach out to your mom." She's like, "We need to make them dinner and, and bring it over to them. And let's, and we also need to set a time for us to go out to dinner with them."
Yeah.
Guess what? She's thinking about my parents.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my parents. I want to make that a priority. I have a call every Monday with Leif. The only time we don't do it is if he has something going on or I do with a client during that time.
Right.
I value that time. The fact that I get a full hour, just Leif and I one-on-one time, I value that. Recently had a call with Jocko, and it was just like him and I just talking. So I don't know, Mike, I think you probably feel the same way.
I do too, 100%. And to go off what you were saying, like intentional time, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so
Yeah.
I'm stealing a line from somebody, and it's in the notes that we shared yesterday. Discipline produces desire.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
It's not the other way.
it's not the other way around. So, in this case, for your young man, you can be like, "Hey, you need to have the discipline to set this up and start doing it. And the more you do it, you're actually going to start desiring." So it ties into what we were talking about is God's word. You have the discipline to be in God's word every day, to spend time with God every day. But then through that discipline, it creates a desire. You don't start with a desire and then it turns into discipline. So I think that's a good practical way to look at it and explain to somebody that you might not desire it now, but number one, you need it.
Yeah.
It's necessary. Look at all these men that can be successful men. Look at you, well, it's maybe someone else. Maybe. Well, I only said that because he shook his head. Okay,
Yeah.
So he's gonna edit that out, try to make me look bad, but he shook his head like no. So I just pivoted off of that. I was trying to be.
It's all right. They're watching on YouTube. They'll
But
see
yeah,
it.
so
I'll just have to
it's
make proper cuts.
successful people are disciplined for the right reasons,
Yeah.
and through their discipline creates desire.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing, though, when you think about that, because I think there are a lot of people that they'll listen to a story like this or an episode like this, and they're like, well, I don't have a group. That sounds great for them, but I don't have a group of friends that I could go do this with. And one, like outside of the defeatist attitude that,
get rid
the
of
average
that.
has, right? The second is that like these relationships weren't developed overnight. Like it took time, and even if that time was, and this was one of the things I told my young guys is like, where do you develop your relationships? Like the guys that you go to school with, that's scheduled time, because you have to be at school with one another.
Yeah.
The people that you developed those relationships over lunchtime, like that was scheduled time that you knew you were going to be at lunch and this kind of thing. And so when you look at that, like the time that you have with your people at church, the group of guys that work out at the same time that you do, whether you know them or not, you start to, when you're consistent with those things, you start to get to know those people. That like those relationships built over time is what creates the opportunity to do these kind of things. And if you're not intentional about pouring into the people around you, but also allowing them that opportunity to influence you or to get respect and trust and listen back and forth, then these things may seem like they're incredibly unattainable. One of the things that has always stood out to me when we talk about like relationships between men is that most men over 30, and I don't remember statistically off the top of my head, but it's greater than 80% of the men over 30 say that they don't have two close friends.
That's sad, man.
It's incredibly sad, right? And
I don't mean that those people are sad. I'm genuinely saying
like the
that's,
statistic is heartbreaking.
Makes it hard to go through life.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is like your lack of intentionality with others is typically the barrier that comes up there from little things like you didn't schedule time. Like, I'm not as close to the friends that I had during high school. Right, because you're not going to school together every day. You're not forced to be in that environment anymore. Yeah. And, doing those little things, planning trips, whether it's your once a year bro trip that you get together in order to keep those relationships kindled, or if it's hey, you know what? I'm setting a reminder on my phone that like every other Tuesday I'm going to call, JP or shoot Mike a text message and just check up on him and see how he's doing. Like those little touch points really go a long way to developing these types of long-term relationships.
He doesn't do that for me.
No, I don't do that for you.
That's why
I did try to have lunch with him a few years ago.
You did.
And then you said no.
I was not available. It made me sad. No.
That's why I also encourage people to train jiu-jitsu, because everything that we're talking about right now, you get from jiu-jitsu. You're training hard with somebody, you're struggling with some, you're working through hard times with people, doing hard things, and it's a great community. I know that's why Mike trains and does the triathlons and the half Ironmans. He has a team that he trains with, and he does solo training and team training, and they do these things together. Like, these are good things that you should be doing to push yourself. Yeah. What else you got, buddy?
I think there's so much to dive into from the relationship aspect, because again, just having the relationship with the guys to go and to plan this kind of trip, to do something that is outside of your comfort zone or that you have to like work hard and prepare for is one thing, right? And then this type of thing can be done around like different. I mean, maybe it's the 3K Spartan race is what you're gonna go do, and then it doesn't have to be a full trip, but can work its way into that. The strength of the relationship also shows when you're able to have those honest conversations, not just where you're having an honest self-assessment that you're doing, but also that you've got the comfort to be able to be honest in that other group. And so, once we're intentional, we've built that relationship, we're able to do something that pushes us, mentally, physically, spiritually, and all of those kinds of things. What do you find is the biggest barrier at that point, and continuing to be vulnerable instead of like what we do in a lot of our relationships is assuming that the other person knows enough about us to know like what's going on in our lives? Because that vulnerability that you guys were talking about was really of everything in the trip, as much as the up and downs and the physical part or whatever, like that 4 hours that y'all talked about really seems like it was the best part of the entire trip. So what do you do to maintain vulnerability with your band of brothers?
I'm going to use one word as transparency. There's a difference between being open and willing to talk and then being transparent, right? So this life, the challenges throughout life, challenges don't stop. The uphills don't stop until you stop breathing. Mm-hmm. So you're being unrealistic with yourself if you think that you know everything you need to know about somebody and nothing new's coming up. So if nothing's new coming up, like if you and I were talking a lot and I said, no, man, I'm good. I'm lying to you. Because we're all going through something different time. We're all in a different season. It might not be as severe or significant, but we're all going through something at some point. So being transparent with those people, but you also, once again, be intentional and selective who you're transparent with. Not with everybody, just like we were talking about the 3 or 4 hours that we spent in prayer with each other. I ain't telling you what we were talking about. I ain't telling my wife what we were talking about. Yeah. You know what I mean? And not maybe with me, about me, but I ain't sharing anything that anybody else says. Yeah. So and it's not because I don't trust Emily. And it's not like he doesn't trust Amanda or Tyron trusts Betsy. It's just like you have to be very selective with who you give that information to. Yeah. But you have to be transparent with somebody that's trustworthy. And like you said, those relationships take time to build. I've known Tyron since 2012, and I pursued some sort of relationship because I always looked up to him, right? Mm. But it took me 10 years before like him and I kind of just started to have a conversation. Now we pass each other. I run security for the church. Him and I had a little bit of a relationship, but until my wife started talking, working for his wife, that's when him and I became really connected. But throughout those years, I intentionally pursued him, intentionally tried to give something to him, pour into him in some sort of way without expectation of any return.
Yeah.
And that's
a big part.
Transparency. Yeah. Not expecting a return on the investment is pretty important.
Yeah. So if I was to pick one word and not pick what he picked, it would be trust. Because I was transparent, I trust these guys, and I trust, like Mike said, like what I talked about, he's not going to share. Neither is Tyron or Chris, but I will share it with my wife. Like that was actually my plans for tonight, is for us to be able to sit down and work through stuff, and just me share like what I worked through, because that's what's important. You should do that with your spouse. Like if you're working through stuff spiritually, you 100% should share that with your spouse, because you guys are connected, you are one, and like what I deal with affects her, what she deals with affects me. And to piggyback on what he just said, one of the things that Chris said that night is the war is won, but the battle will continue until we draw our last breath. Yep. And so it's just to understand, like, hey, bro, like you might have won some major wars, like with cleaning house and getting freedom from stuff, but it doesn't mean that the temptation goes away. Yeah. Like the devil's out there, he's prowling to attack you. And so remember, the war is won, but the battle will continue. And that's why in Ephesians, it tells us, put on your armor daily. And so for me, it was just a good reminder of like, yeah, okay, I overcame a lot of stuff, but man, the battles will continue every day. And you know what? When I realize who I am in God's image, is like I'm built for battle. He has built and designed me for battle. Like he has every single person out there. He's actually equipped all of us to be in battle. And that's what I needed to shift my focus to, was like, okay, I won these wars, but I was getting complacent. Yeah. So.
Well, it was the void, right? Like that's what was brought up, and I'm stealing words from, these aren't my words.
Sure.
But
I steal stuff all the time.
Yeah. Like when you clean house, when you go through a freedom moment where you have a breakthrough, there's a void that gets sucked out of whatever that was causing the breakthrough, whatever the foothold was that the enemy had on you. But it's what do you fill it back in with? Because the enemy is going to come back 7 times harder. So I just wanted to caveat, you can have a breakthrough, you can have a moment, but you have to be intentional and put in the work to, what are you filling that space back up with?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, man, all of this stuff is really encouraging to me, and it does hit at the heart of a lot of not just what we're trying to do at our church, or what, we're trying to do with this podcast or any of those things, but I think the place that a lot of guys that are around our age are sort of coming to the realization of is this: we've had this withdrawal for one reason or another. Maybe it's because of social media, maybe it's because of video games, maybe it's just because we got depressed and isolated. Whatever was the impetus for this withdrawal, like it has happened, or maybe, as a lot of people posit, that it has to do with some of the inappropriate things that have been made incredibly accessible online. Whatever was the reason for this withdrawal is that men in general have withdrawn, not just from culture and from society, which is something that we can see has happened, but we've also started to withdraw from one another. And there is, I think, a realization of that. And now I think one of the biggest responsibilities that spiritual leaders have, that mentors have, that business leaders and anybody that's doing any kind of work with the current generation, being like the millennials, because we're being put in charge of stuff now. We're rightly or wrongly, we're running companies and all of those kinds of things, right?
Millennials have been doing stuff for a very long time.
Right. But now this is no longer like we are the future. Like now this is it. This is our generation is in that place where we're eligible to become presidents with, and all of those kinds of things. But so all of that said, it's our responsibility to not just discover for ourselves, but to help others find out how do we plug back in, how do we get back involved with one another, with our culture, and with our communities. I think is a big issue. So thank you guys for sharing all this, because I think it helps point us in that direction.
And I know Mike always said, I know we have to wrap this up, but I would ask you guys, like, if you guys have questions, drop them in the comment section on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, awesome, thank you. Go over to YouTube, put them in the questions, and then Mike, if you'd be willing to come back and we could do a Q&A session built around this episode, just the two of us just opening up and diving into some of these questions. If Mike's able to, awesome. If not, Lucas and I can expand upon those. So any questions you guys have and or your takeaways that we can expand upon, put them in the comments. That would be awesome.
Will you still have your beard?
No, because I have work stuff coming up very soon. So this beard is going to be gone.
One? Are you going to keep yours? Or?
We'll see.
We'll see. We got a little bit of money left to raise for AMW.
My response is
Sweet
contingent upon
Okay.
your physical appearance.
Okay. Well,
if I am baby faced, bro, I will look like a child.
all right, I'm going to close it out before we go down
Let's
that
do
rabbit
it.
hole. So I just want to thank you guys for the support you've given us by listening, sharing, subscribing. I have some final thoughts. So if you're about to click off, don't. I have some final thoughts I really think some of you guys can connect to. So anyways, all the support you guys give us on just YouTube and social media and the different platforms, we appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. You can be notified when our YouTube exclusive episodes come out. Follow us on social media. I am at JP Dinnell. Lucas is at Lucas Pinkard, LucaspiNckard. Mike is at Mikey M83. Private profile. I don't know if he'll let you into his life, but if you want to go knock on that door, go ahead. Make sure you're also following Echelon Front on social media at Echelon Front. Go to echelonfront.com, click on events, see what we have going on. If you want an instructor to come work with you or just come join us at an event, that'd be awesome. Check out Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. It's a ministry that I'm a part of. Our website is jesusandjujitsuusa.com. You can check out the podcast, you can check out future events, and you can grab some of that merch. We have rash guards, we have t-shirts, we have hats, we have stickers. Go get you some, because 100% of those profits help out the ministry. Also, that podcast we have comes out every Tuesday, doing live events and a discipleship program. So I appreciate your guys' support. I'm happy I get to be a part of that with Josh, Isaac, Steven, Lucas, Troy, Matt. It's a good time, man. But anyways, also partner of a Texas beef company called Little Cattle Co.
Get that beef.
Yeah, dog. Our website is littlecattle.co. We can deliver anywhere in the lower 48 states. We're an a la carte custom order beef company that allows you to order exactly what you need each time based off the needs of your family. We also have a ground beef subscription plan. And also we have our new beef sticks, which are absolutely incredible. They're great for backpacking trips, hiking, camping, road trips. If you're on the road a lot like I am, those are awesome. I put them in my backpack, so I'm not as I'm trying to get back on the as I get back on the path with my health, able to eat one of those little Calico beef sticks and not crush food that I should not be eating. The beef tallow products that we have, the body butter, the after sun products, the tallow cream, the lip balm is awesome. I got super sunburn and windburn out there. Putting that beef tallow on the skin every day helped rejuvenate the skin. No peeling, no blisters, none of that. Also, if you want to be a wholesaler for the beef sticks and or the beef tallow products, we have a few people we're getting currently set up. So if you want to be a part of that as well, send an email to amanda@littlecattle.co. Also, remember, we can send custom orders of beef and or beef sticks and tallow. Any of our products, we can send a custom order to any of your family, friends, clients, show your appreciation to them. We'll add a custom note. Also, check out On the Path Printing on Instagram. It's another company I'm a part of with Josh Strasburger. We are printing and we have the ability to print. So send us a message. Let us know what you have and what you want, and we'll make sure that we're a good fit. If we're not a good fit, we'll refer you to another good company out there. We just want you to be taken care of. Also partner with Jocko and Leif with another company called Bruiser Arms. We are a training and gear company. Check us out on Instagram at Bruiser Arms, and we'll be putting out some more content, hopefully some training coming up in this end of this quarter, or definitely the beginning of first quarter of next year, with some different training classes. And you can order gear from us right now. Send us a message. Also want to thank Origin and Jocko Fuel. Thank Origin and Jocko Fuel for all the support they've given us over the years. Check out originusa.com to check out 100% American-made gear, the best jiu-jitsu gear, the best clothes, the best pants, the best hunt line. I mean, the feedback, I mean, Mikey, I know you have a few things from Origin. You enjoy their stuff, and Tyron had a pair of shorts, I believe, and he has a pair of boots. But, like, overall, like, what'd you think of the RTX Burr top that you were able to wear with those pants, man?
I was impressed. So I run Kuyu.
Yep.
On pretty much everything. I have all their stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the stuff that you gave me, it was phenomenal. So
Yeah.
the long sleeve with the hoodie,
Yeah.
really light, but blocked the sun for me. But it was also, it was good for 65, 70 degree weather to keep me cool when the sun was on me, but when also when we were in the shade, I was still warm. So
yeah, it was
the pants were phenomenal. Everything acted like top quality.
And that nano wool ninja hoodie at night.
Yes, yeah, that was really nice because it came in with a built-in mask.
Ooh,
it was
that's
really
cool.
good with the hoodie mask, and and it never stunk. Right,
Yeah.
so like we carried too much weight because we brought too many clothes, and
Yeah.
with some of that stuff is you only need one pair.
Yeah, it was awesome. Also, check out jockofuel.com to get your supplements and the cleanest energy drinks out there. We are also in Walmart now, so go clear the shelves at Walmart. Get your Jocko Fuel products. So as I close it out, Mike, thank you for being here. Thank you for your closing thoughts. One of the things I didn't get to talk about earlier that I just want to close it out was just the big thing that I got from this trip was just, learning to being settled in my sonship, meaning who did God make me? Who am I in God's eyes? And understanding that, I have an awesome past and I'm thankful for everything that I did, but my past doesn't define who I am currently in the future, and who I am currently is who God made me. And I need to be more comfortable and understand more of what that sonship is to me. And I need to study the word and memorize the word and fill my heart with the word in regards to what that sonship is, so that I'm not looking for the approval of man. I'm not doing things to perform to get approval or gain approval, knowing that I have approval from God and who he made me to be. And I need to focus on being the best version of who God made me to be. And so I hope you do the same. I hope you pursue what that sonship means to you, for men and women alike. And I hope this episode has been a reminder to go out there and do the work that is needed and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 53.